I'm Alistair Stevens.
I'm Elizabeth Ray.
And Tom Cruise is Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible 2.
Welcome to this episode of Last Star in Hollywood, where I, Lizzie Sawyer, 16-year-old, tries to tell you why this movie is actually kind of great, and you're wrong about it.
Oh, Lizzie Sawyer, 16 years old. I have some terrible things to tell you about your future.
Don't tell me.
We gotta do something about your kids. So what is it that you love the most about this film? Is it the Oakleys? Is it the Limp Bizkit soundtrack? Is it the stylization, capital M, lowercase I dash 2? Someone decided that that was how this film should be presented to the world. Like a person was paid for that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's rewind back to the year 2000.
Sure.
Just give us a gloss of where you are pop culturally as this film comes out.
Okay. All right. Well, I was a youth in Choctaw, Oklahoma. So that already, I think, tells you a little something about what was cool and what was not. I was in a relationship with my first boyfriend, first love of my life, and feeling like a pretty cool, pretty girl, which I had never felt before. And I remember this movie just being marketed the hell out of. Like, you could not go anywhere without hearing about the Mission Impossible movie and seeing the crazy motorcycle jump, which is bad. And I don't mind telling you, the motorcycle shit is bad. I'm not saying that the whole movie is great.
We might wind up disagreeing pretty comprehensively about this film,
it feels
like.
I think that's exciting. Sure. Yeah. I remember watching interviews with Tandaway Newton, then Tandy Newton, talking about how exciting and terrifying it was to be on the set of such a huge movie, and thinking for maybe the first time about what it must be like to be in movies, to make movies, to be a movie star. I think this was the first time I started really thinking about that, because even watching it now, I am seeing how this particular film, in ways I would never have told anyone 24 hours ago, inflected my sense of style as like someone just wearing clothes in the 2000s.
Sure.
I wore a lot of scarves, and I think this movie is why I wore a lot of scarves that I kept getting for like $4 at Ross,
Well, and the good thing is that if a scarf ever starts to blow away, Dougray Scott will grab it in slow motion.
And you know what? I thought that was hot. I don't know what to say about it. I just did. I still think it was hot. I watched it, this morning, and I was like, nope, I stand by this.
This makes a lot of sense, though. What was your relationship, if you can even remember, with like auteur cinema at that point in your life? Like, did you even have a sense of directors and their personal styles, or were you still like receiving movies as like a blob of entertainment?
Yeah. I was just getting one. I was just starting to understand that. I think I was, doing more creative work myself. So I was starting to think about writing, and I was writing poems, and I was in plays, and I was probably writing plays, although they were very, very bad. So we don't need to talk about that. I was, after all, 16 years old. But I think that's when I started to kind of understand a little more about style and auteur directors. But I wasn't really thinking about those until film school, if I'm honest. Like, that's mid-30s.
There's a decent chance that you're coming into this film and seeing all of this really evident, personal, unique style, all the fingerprints of John Woo on this film, and recognizing it as something pretty unique in your experience.
Definitely.
I can completely understand how that would connect with you.
When was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon?
Ang Lee's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon wasn't until December of 2000, so...
But the same year. And this is the year that Gladiator came out, too.
Yep.
So this was a huge year for, like, big swinging for the fences movies that felt different.
Fair, yeah.
To me, anyway. But I think I had seen there are a few movies... I had seen Great Expectations. I had seen Gattaca.
Sure.
And even knowing about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, I knew Ang Lee because I loved the Sense and Sensibility that Ang Lee had done. So I was ready for that. So I was starting to think about it. I must have been.
But even those examples, I think, those are genre films. Those are tucked a little more off in the periphery, whereas there was nothing bigger in the world than Mission Impossible 2.
It sure felt that way, which is crazy when you think about Gladiator being that same year, because Gladiator was the shit, and it still is.
Turned into, but it's still, an historical epic. It's still of a very different, you anticipate just a smaller audience for a film like that. It's not the, 4-quadrant blockbuster that is Tom Cruise with this haircut.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think it explains perfectly why you come into this film with a certain generosity, and this is not going to be an hour of me beating up this film. It is bad, is the thing. It is a bad Mission Impossible film. It is the worst Mission Impossible film.
It is maybe a bad Mission Impossible
It's
film.
not the worst Tom Cruise film.
Better standalone film. Not the worst Tom Cruise film by a long shot.
No.
I'm sure that's true. I was just thinking about how it stacks up to James Bond movies, which is pretty good, I think. I think there are many worse James Bond movies.
Is it better than the average James Bond movie?
I feel like yes.
Roger Moore is really dragging that average down, though. Is it better than every Roger Moore movie? No, it's probably not better than Octopussy, but it's probably better than all the other Roger Moore movies.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was better than Dalton. I wouldn't say it was better than On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is a film that most people do not like, but I like.
That one is good. No, that's a good one. I agree.
I don't think it's necessarily better than GoldenEye, but it's maybe better than all the other Brosnans.
See, now we're putting our finger on something, because I liked the Brosnan Bonds at that point too. And that was my introduction to Bonds. So something was happening with me at this particular stage of my life where I was like, this shit is cool.
Right.
And I don't know why I felt that way. And certainly most women from these films are written poorly. Most of them are bad. Most of them are just arm candy or straight up villains, and they're not interesting. But I do think that Thandie Newton's character, Nyah, and Sophie Marceau's character, Electra King
in The World Is Not Enough, which is the previous James Bond film to Mission Impossible 2. It came out 5 months before this film.
There you go. Another movie which is bad, but which I love.
Yes, before we praise The World Is Not Enough too much for Sophie Marceau, let's also remember Denise Richards.
I do.
Yes.
I do remember. But I guess that's when I was starting to pick apart, like, how do these kinds of movies portray women? And in what ways are they interesting? And in what ways are they absolutely not?
Well, and these movies are very much in a state of flux, right? The story of the Brosnan Bonds is kind of a reckoning with that series, that franchise's own internal misogyny. And in the end, kind of throwing its hands up and saying, I don't know how we can fix it. Maybe we just won't. How about that? Which
maybe not a fix.
Isn't ideal, but maybe all that you can expect for the very early 2000s. Yeah. It's a tough time in action cinema. And I think that you're right. I think that there are ways in which Mission Impossible 2 is a victim of its own history, right? It's a victim of its own place in this transformative cycle of action movies in the very, very early 2000s. It's also a victim of, John Woo. It's also a victim of Tom Cruise. It's also a victim of many, many other circumstances.
Many things, yes.
Many myriad choices made through the production and pre-production of this film, all of which we will get into. But first, it's your turn for the trailer game. And if I was a little mad that I got Magnolia last week, I'm thrilled that you get Mission Impossible 2 this week.
Okay. 4 years after losing his team, Ethan Hunt is back. And I'm not afraid to say it, he's hotter than ever. The cars are finally looking sexy again. The internet has come a really long way. Leather jackets look like leather again. And with John Woo at the helm, there are more sparks, more steam, more diamond pieces of glass flying all over the place than your eyes have seen yet in a film in these United States of America. Sir Anthony Hopkins is here, being long-winded and a little bit boring. Brendan Gleeson is here, sweaty as ever, but we love him. Dougray Scott is not sure what movie he's in. Ving Rhames in Versace. Slow motion, Thandie Newton. And slow motion pigeons and doves for days. This summer, we welcome you to Mission Impossible 2.
Rolling.
I do hate Limp Bizkit.
It's the worst soundtrack in the world.
But you get the cool Hans Zimmer score. Hans Zimmer, who also did the Gladiator score this year, and he's clear.
This Hans Zimmer score, I don't get it.
I think it's cool.
This is the thing where I'm not even being like a naysayer. This is not criticism of this film. I just don't. It's fine. Is it not just fine?
Do you like the Gladiator score?
I do like the Gladiator
score. This is
score.
the same woman, right? The same vocalist? It must be.
It must be. I would imagine so.
Whatever this vibe is, I really dig it.
It's funny that you bring up that this is 4 years after Mission Impossible. The gap between 1996 and the year 2000
huge
feels enormous.
Right? A good 20 years difference must be.
It is a different world. And really, I mean, that did see a revolution, yes, in the internet, in computer technology, in digital editing, in digital photography. We're really moving into the modern era as far as film production is concerned. And this movie feels yet very different than the very, the staid and kind of steady and kind of quietly competent Mission Impossible. This feels so outrageous in every direction. And a lot of it does, I think, work. You call that a few of John Woo's signature moves.
Oh,
right?
sure.
A lot of slow motion, a lot of birds in the air. But really, he also handles, the fight choreography with a great deal of resourcefulness and inventiveness, I think. So we'll talk, obviously, about John Woo as we get in. But we have to begin, of course, with the pre-production cycle for this film, which starts immediately after Mission Impossible is released because it's a huge hit. Yeah, they just start making the next one immediately. Brian De Palma.
Why does it take so long?
Because it kind of stalls out, and then Tom Cruise goes to London for 2 years to make Eyes Wide Shut.
Oh, yeah.
We just can't quite get it
that
moving.
barnstormer of a movie.
It's offered to Brian De Palma originally. He immediately turns it down. The direct quote from De Palma, quote, "Are you kidding? One of these is enough. Why would anyone want to make another one?"
Rude.
Presumably somewhat relieved by that. Cruz then approaches Oliver Stone, of all people, who had directed Cruz, of course, in Born on the 4th of July.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a good time for Stone because his films have been on the slide since JFK. He's not seeing the same kind of popularity and commercial success as he once did. So he signs up, and this is also the point at which the idea of Mission Impossible as an auteur franchise comes about. This is where Cruise gets the idea, no, we don't have to have consistency. We can trade off movie by movie by movie and let different authors, different directors put their fingerprints on these films, which is going to be true for the next 2 films after this.
It's a neat idea.
It's a neat idea that never really works. And then when the films settle down and Christopher McQuarrie starts directing, basically Tom Cruise is directing himself at that point, the films really kind of take on a new identity, I think. Though we've got J.J. Abrams for 3 and then, of course, Brad Bird for 4. Yeah. So Oliver Stone, when he signs up, he hires David Marconi, who had been a production aide all the way back on The Outsiders and had then moved into producing roles and was now looking for a way out to move into writing. He would later write the very good Will Smith, Gene Hackman Enemy of the State.
Oh, yeah.
Just a couple years after he's hired on to Mission Impossible 2. The script that he writes is kind of a mess, but it also features like a half dozen elements that will be recycled in subsequent Mission Impossible films. So I will call those out when we get to them in Rogue Nation and Ghost Protocol and so on and so forth. It's also a much more science fiction movie. It handles things like identity and virtual reality and artificial intelligence 2 years before The Matrix is written.
Yeah.
So it's a really progressive, big picture, big thought kind of movie that, of course, doesn't work. So Oliver Stone backs off while Tom Cruise is in London shooting Eyes Wide Shut. And by the time he comes back, the script is just a mess. It's just in disarray. So the studio hires, 2 screenwriters who have just had a very big hit with a long-running franchise based on a TV show. The studio hires Brannon Braga and Ronald D. Moore, who have been working on Star Trek for years and years and years, and who just wrote First Contact. The best next-gen era film, and the second best Star Trek film overall, probably. This is their first non-Star Trek work, and they spend a month at the Cruise Kidman house in Los Angeles, going in every day, working 9 to 5 with Cruise, trying to, first revise the Marconi script, trying to make that story work, and when it becomes evident that they can't make that story work, throw that out and break an entirely new story, which they do. This is where they get their story by credit on this film. And that story by credit comes from basically deciding to rework Notorious, the Alfred Hitchcock movie, the Cary Grant, Ingrid Bergman, Claude Rains, Alfred Hitchcock movie.
I haven't seen that.
It's basically this story at the highest possible level, right? It's a good spy hires a young woman to infiltrate the bad spy's organization by seducing the bad spy, but the good spy falls in love with the young woman. And so tense. It's a really great movie.
Sounds great.
I would love to put that actually on our list for a bonus episode. I know we're talking about putting a John Woo movie on the list. Maybe we'll do both. Maybe we'll let the listeners decide, because Notorious is extremely good.
Yeah, those are 2 very interesting, very different choices for our bonus episode.
This gives us the bare bones of the film. This gives us the outline. At some point around here, William Goldman apparently writes a draft of the script. He takes a pass at this idea, but he says later that he couldn't get the villain right, and the script goes on to Robert Towne, who had previously worked with Cruise on Days of Thunder, on The Firm, and on Mission Impossible 1. He takes a swing at it and gets sole screenplay credit. This is the last time that Towne will work with Cruise. Does this feel to you like Robert Towne's script? Does it feel to you like Days of Thunder, like The Firm?
I mean, I guess so. I like the script just fine. I feel like it has similar problems, which is basically just that the very back third just gets so long-winded with chasing and fighting and running around and people being sweaty, and I just don't care about that very much. But
Yeah.
beyond that, I feel like there are moments of really fun levity in the script. I think there are things that, if not make me laugh, like give me a little bit of a chuckle.
I think that there are some. I think there's some good characterization.
Mm-hmm.
I think that of those scripts that I just mentioned, all the ones that Robert Towne worked on for Tom Cruise, I think that this is by far the weakest. At least it's absolutely the least consistent, because there are whole scenes here where, frankly, the dialogue stinks.
Wow.
Don't you think?
Didn't notice.
I've got a story a little later, a story told by Tendi Wayne Newton long after this film was produced about one of those scenes. We'll get to that.
Sure. Is this the balcony scene?
It is the balcony scene.
I read a little bit about this too.
Yes,
Okay, yeah, let's talk about it. I
yes.
kind of like that scene, but okay. Maybe they just edited it together really well and cut some things that didn't work.
The individual lines are just very poor. I think that
maybe overall the whole film suffers from bad exposition or characters saying how they feel.
Yeah. Well, and I think that sometimes scripts like that can actually be turned into pretty good films. Like, a director can take a middling script and make it good on set. A director who cares about the rhythms of dialogue and the arcs of characters can really turn an average script into something very special by, directing the actors. John Woo did not speak English on the set of this film. He could speak English by this point, but he decided early in the production cycle that it would be better for him to not speak English on the set, to not worry about possible miscommunication or being misunderstood, and to instead rely on translators exclusively. And that meant that he was very distant from the actors.
Yeah.
During that balcony scene that we were just discussing, he wasn't present on set. He was a whole house away watching the whole thing on a monitor. So he wasn't able to communicate with the actors in this moment.
Well, that gives me more respect for what they're both doing, because I think that both Tendi Wayne Newton and Tom Cruise are quite good in this. I think they're giving nice performances. And they have good chemistry together, which is the thing that we never say about Tom Cruise and anybody else.
Do you think so?
I do think so. Yeah. They seem to have, and again, this maybe you can feel the performing happening, but they seem to have a real tenderness and affection between them that I like.
I really like how they are at the beginning of the film. I think that her character introduction, it's a little over-stylized for my taste, but generally I think it works. And then I think we just stop giving her development. I think we just establish her and then leave her alone.
Either. Yeah.
Well, and we can't
None of the characters are really developed.
I don't know to what degree we can meaningfully talk about Tom Cruise's performance in this film, because I don't know who the hell he is. This is not a recognizable Ethan Hunt.
It's true. This is not the Ethan Hunt that we knew, and it's not the Ethan Hunt that we'll get again. I think this guy is cool, though. I like him.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, again, probably an unpopular opinion, but I think this might be the hottest Tom Cruise we ever get.
I think that is probably an opinion that has never been expressed before. And as always, you are to be applauded for your originality.
Diplomatic. Thank you. Thanks. Oh, God.
We should mention, since we've alluded to it, that much later in 2020, Tendi Wayne Newton gave an interview to Vulture where she was talking publicly about her negative experience working with Cruise on this film. They're shooting that scene on the balcony. They're both stressed out. It's extremely late at night, and they both know that it's a badly written scene. Cruise is getting more and more frustrated because they can't get their chemistry to work. They can't get the delivery to line up. And I'll quote this rather than put words in her mouth. Quote, "And he gets so frustrated with having to try and explain it. He goes, let me just go do it. Let's just rehearse on camera." So we rehearsed and they recorded it. And then he goes, "I'll be you, you be me." So we filmed the entire scene with me being him, because believe me, I knew the lines by then, and him playing me. And it was the most unhelpful. I can't think of anything less revealing. It just pushed me further into a place of terror and insecurity. It was a real shame. And bless him. And I really do mean bless him, because he was trying his damnedest. End quote.
Yeah.
And that is not the shot that is in the film. That is not the sequence that is in the film. They went back the next week to record it again. They just shot the whole thing again from the jump.
Because the scene worked for me. I really liked the, do you want me to tell you I don't want you to do it? Would that make you feel better? And she says, yes. And he says, then feel better. I think kind of great.
Yeah. I think that is a good moment.
You like it? Good.
I think that is a good moment. I think there are a handful of good moments. And I think that is really like the problem with this film, is that in everything bad, there are a couple of exceptions,
Yeah.
right? I don't think Dougray Scott is very good in this film, but he has a couple of moments where he's great. I don't think the cinematography is particularly good in this film, but there are a couple of moments when I think it's great. And that is just going to be a constant refrain
Yeah.
as we move through the whole of this film. As I was watching it, every 5 minutes, I would change my mind on what was making the film bad, what was dragging it down. There's 5 minutes at the racetrack where I'm like, the problem with this movie is Tom Cruise. He sucks. And that's demonstrably not true.
Yeah.
But maybe for that 5 minutes, it's true.
Yeah, I can see that. He maybe struggles the most when they're just giving him this benevolent, patriarchal, whatever bullshit that he gets. I think that's less interesting to me than the romantic angle.
What's so fascinating, and we'll really have an opportunity to talk about this a little when we talk about Mission Impossible 3, but really when we get to Brad Bird's 4th installment in the franchise, is that this movie is reintegrated into our understanding of Ethan Hunt because this is him like acting out his PTSD. This is him traumatized by the loss of his team in Mission Impossible 1 and trying to be both simultaneously alone and also like the protector of everyone.
Yeah.
He has to be responsible for everything.
Even the security guards.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought that was interesting.
There's some interesting dynamic that I don't think is present in this film. I don't think that this film is a reflection on his trauma losing his team in Mission Impossible 1, but it is
Not as
subsequently
much.
transformed into that
Yeah.
in a way that I think is potentially at least really interesting. We'll talk about all of that when we get to 3 and 4. So the script is finally more or less ready to go, and this is when Cruz personally reaches out to John Woo. Woo is born in 1946 in China to Christian parents who are forced to flee to Hong Kong following the communist purges when Woo is 5 years old. His life is hard. His father has tuberculosis and cannot work. His mother works a crushing job on a construction site. He himself has spinal surgery and cannot walk properly until he is 8 years old. And Hong Kong of this era, particularly the slums of Hong Kong, are a maelstrom of violent crime. He grows up wanting to be a Christian minister, but as a teenager falls in love with films, particularly the French New Wave and with American Westerns. In 1969, he's hired as a script supervisor. By 74, he's directing his first film. He works hard through the 70s and the early 80s. He makes like a film or two every single year. But it's A Better Tomorrow in 1986 that elevates him to a whole other tier. This is the movie that is credited with inventing gun fu, this balletic movement with guns, this martial art that incorporates, heavy weaponry. And that's also his first collaboration with Chow Yun-fat, who would work with Woo on 4 more Hong Kong action movies, including The Killer in 1989, which is the first movie to really get Woo international recognition. And then in 1992, he makes Hard Boiled, which is a darker, more ambitious movie. And then Hollywood lures him to California. His first movie in America is Hard Target with Jean-Claude Van Damme, which is a 70-day shoot in New Orleans, during which Woo clashes horribly with Van Damme, with the producers, with the studio, and has trouble communicating with his cinematographer because he hasn't yet become fluent in English. His contract with Universal on that film requires an R-rated cut of the film, and they are applying constant pressure to tone down the gun violence and the body count of the film, because that's why you hire John Woo, right? Because you don't really want gun violence or a body count. When the movie goes to the MPAA, it's given an NC-17 rating, and Woo has to keep recutting it 6 times in all because, just to make it fun. The MPAA, when they rate your film, they don't tell you why they have rated it what they have rated it.
Jesus.
Yeah, so they won't tell you what you need to cut.
That's
because they
awful.
don't want to get into a horse trading negotiation with any particular producer. So 6 times he has to go back and re-edit this film before it comes down to an R rating. During this period, Jean-Claude Van Damme spends his own money to hire an independent editor to come in and make his own cut of the film, which excises other characters completely and adds an estimated 15 minutes of close-ups and action shots of his character.
Naturally. Gross.
The movie itself is released to mixed reviews, but most of the criticism is leveled at a poor script and, understandably, at Van Damme himself. Legendary New York Times reviewer Janet Maslin wrote, quote, "Van Damme has still not broken the habit of his own blank-faced posturing, although Mr. Woo films him in the most aggrandizing style imaginable." Which is pretty good. The movie goes on to make $74 million off a budget of $20 million and becomes something of a cult hit. In 1996, Woo releases Broken Arrow with John Travolta and Christian Slater. Reviews are again mixed, again pointing at a poor script, and this time a hammy performance from Travolta.
Sure.
It makes $150 million off of a budget of $50 million.
I mean.
In 1997, he releases Face Off with Travolta and Nicolas Cage, a movie that is saved, I think, only because Cage is as committed to the lunacy as John Woo is. He's finally found someone who can meet him on that level, and it excuses what I think is an even worse performance from John Travolta.
I saw that movie too, but I don't really remember it. I just remember it being, again, like so many sparks flying. And there are birds in that one too, right?
In all of them.
In all
Yes.
of them.
Yes. It's a real trademark. Yeah. I think that Cage is properly demented in that film.
Sure.
And that is where the enjoyment of that film comes from. I think, as I said, I think Travolta is very bad. Either way, that movie makes $245 million off a budget of $80 million. And it's the dumbest film ever, but it commits to it so hard that it becomes transformative. It feels like Looney Tunes. It feels like a live action cartoon.
Wow.
And more than it just feels like a regular action movie.
I did have a few notes from this film where I was like, is this dumb or is this cool? Cool dumb? Dumb cool? I don't know.
I think that the
I
line
think
between
maybe
cool
both.
and dumb is a very fine one.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So it's fair to say that in his Hollywood years, Wu has this kind of glossy, expensive, highest possible octane version of his Hong Kong style, which on the one hand makes him a really interesting choice for Mission Impossible 2, and on the other makes it really weird that when he is hired onto this film, he states publicly that he doesn't care about spies and wants to make this a romance. He's really invested in the love story,
Wow.
which does not, I think, come through in the finished film at all.
I think a little bit it does for me. I feel like this is the Mission Impossible movie that seems the most focused on the romance to me.
I'm thrilled that Newton's career has gone as well as it has. I'm a little disappointed that she is now independently successful enough that she doesn't ever have to come back to Mission Impossible. But it would be great.
It would be great.
If this franchise pulled a, Fast and Furious.
I'm curious what happens to her character. I don't remember. They obviously
just
write her
disappears,
off.
yeah.
Just disappears. Just,
No more attention will be paid.
ex-girlfriend.
Because,
Cool.
at this point, we're kind of just doing James Bond. We're just kind of having this full
Yeah,
reset.
sure.
It's kind of surprising, honestly, that Ving Rhames comes back as Luther.
Yeah, I guess so. He really is the only one, isn't he?
He's the only one in every
I
single
mean-
movie. I mean, we add
Yeah,
Simon Pegg to the
letter.
recurring cast, pretty soon after this. But yeah, Ving Rhames is the only one apart from Tom Cruise who is in every single one of these films.
Okay.
After this movie, Wu will make Wind Talkers, which is a huge flop,
That's
and
also Nicolas Cage, right?
also Nicolas Cage,
Yeah.
and Paycheck, which was a modest financial success and a critical calamity. That's the Ben Affleck. That's the first Ben Affleck major disaster in his career. That's a guy that just keeps getting lives. He just keeps bouncing back. I don't know. He then returns to Asian cinema for 20 years before returning to America just last year with the movie Silent Night, an action movie without any dialogue starring Joel Kinnaman, which I confidently think, given that
What?
explanation, is the movie that I am least likely to ever
Yes.
see.
Wow.
Literally nothing about that sounds appealing.
Yikes. Okay.
And I understand, I should say here a little bit that I do understand that movies can serve different purposes, right? I do
Sure.
understand that people go to the cinema to see things for different
Absolutely.
reasons. And I understand that there are people who are attracted to pure action cinema. I understand that there are people who are attracted to pure kung fu movies or to John Wick movies. I am not that guy. I
Yeah.
never go to the movies to see an action sequence. I find it very difficult to be
That's when I get up to go to the bathroom.
emotionally engaged by
Yeah.
spectacle. Doesn't really do it for me. I am much more likely to watch a movie like My Dinner with Andre than I am to
Yes.
watch John Wick.
Yes.
That's what I want from movies. But that's a taste thing, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not an argument about quality or
No.
virtue. We have collectively a limited vocabulary that allows us to describe this entire art form in very simplistic terms
Yeah.
that mean that we get this silly crossover where, movie theaters have to show John Wick next to a quiet character-driven piece, John Wick next to May December.
Right. Yeah.
These things are not the same, and they're not intended to be the same, and we shouldn't conflate them. There's no argument at all that can be won about what genre of movie is the best.
Yeah. After watching this movie, I was reading some of the reviews about it at the time, some of the critical reviews. And all the ones that were positive were like, check your brain at the door, grab your popcorn, enjoy the ride. And I was like, yeah. No one's trying to tell you this is a great piece of literature. No one's trying to tell you that this is fine art. It's just kind of fun.
Yeah, I always find that to be such a weird defense, though. And like such a weird criticism in the first place. Hey, this movie's stupid. Yeah, a lot of movies are stupid. And
Yeah.
stupid doesn't really have anything to do with
No.
whether or not something is entertaining. But we are going to see repeatedly later in this franchise how smart and entertaining
Yeah.
actually work better when they are together.
I would agree with that. Smart is better.
You know?
Obviously, I think that. Yeah.
The movie shoots between April and December of 1999, with studio intervention demanding extensive reshoots to add more action into the film.
Wow. Success.
Yeah. John Woo fires his cinematographer a couple of weeks in because he's concerned that the multiple camera setups aren't being run properly. He then brings in Jeffrey Kimball, who had been the cinematographer on Top Gun and was therefore very familiar with multiple camera setups, who would then go on to work with Woo on the rest of his English language films. There's a largely unsubstantiated rumor that the original cut of this film that was submitted to Paramount was 3 hours long, anywhere between 2:45 and 3:15, depending on the source. And internet film guys who like Woo will often cite that in his defense, claiming that the reason that this film is incomprehensible, the reason that these transitions are jarring, is because the film has been cut to ribbons. But there's no real source on this, and there's no real proof that it is true.
And that 2 hours, it feels very much long enough. Probably 30 minutes too long.
It's weird that this is 2 hours, which is a very short, brief film in the Mission Impossible franchise.
Right,
but it does feel long, I think. Yeah. There were rumors that Tom Cruise locked John Woo out of the editing suite to prevent him from touching the final cut of the film, but Woo dismissed those rumors emphatically while doing promotion for Silent Night, though he did say that both Cruise and the studio were applying a lot of pressure to make the film less of a John Woo movie and more of a Tom Cruise movie, which is maybe the kind of thing that you would do if you have the sense that it's not cutting together the way that you want it to cut together. You might want to de-emphasize the things which are provocative to your audience and emphasize the things that are a safe bet on what has already turned into an extremely expensive film. Let's talk a little about our cast, shall we? Let's begin, and I apologize if my accent comes out here, though I know you won't mind, because we're going to talk about Dougray Scott. We're going to talk about the Scottish actor who plays the villain in this piece. And what's really fascinating about Dougray Scott, particularly with regard to this film, is that he is the almost guy. He's the guy who almost breaks like 4 or 5 different times. Prior to shooting this film, he had been cast in Bryan Singer's X-Men as the Wolverine.
Whoa.
He was going to be a major part of that film.
But Hugh Jackman's Hugh Jackman.
Exactly right. That's the thing, is that
I can't be mad about that.
They'd already planned the X-Men shoot so that Dougray Scott would not be on set for the first month because of the anticipated running time of Mission Impossible 2. And then this film just keeps shooting. They just keep going. He also gets slightly injured in a motorcycle crash near the end of the shoot. Obviously, as you can see if you're watching that on screen.
Jesus.
And he just misses his shot. So they cast Hugh Jackman, and the rest, as they say, is history. Which is arguably the best piece of superhero casting. Like we can think of Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. We can think of Chris Evans as Captain America. But it's those two and Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, right? That's the most successful piece of casting in superhero history, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
In any case, Dougray Scott is born in Glenrothes in Fife in 1965. He studies acting at Fife College in Kirkcaldy, and his career is basically that story just repeated over and over and over again. He's the studio choice for James Bond after Brosnan leaves, like a couple of years after Mission Impossible 2, but they decide to pivot to Daniel Craig instead. He plays the second lead in a movie adaptation of the Hitman video games, 10 years before Hitman is a good video game.
Okay.
Somehow. He's the lead in the NBC show Heist in 2006, which is going to be his big breakout. And then that show is so bad that it is canceled after they air 5 episodes. They had 2 full episodes in the can that, to the best of my understanding, have never been released or aired because they're that bad. He joins Desperate Housewives. He's the love interest for Terry Hatcher in the 3rd season of Desperate Housewives, which is the season when everyone stops watching Desperate Housewives. It's this ongoing story of almost making it, almost breaking through, and then not. It's hard, though, to be that sorry for Dougray Scott because he's married to the very beautiful Claire Forlani and has been for almost 20 years.
Right, Claire Forlani.
That's a hot couple. Also, if you haven't seen pictures of Dougray Scott recently, go look him up because he's kind of aged into his looks in a very pleasant way.
I will. Okay. I remember him from Ever After. That's maybe the only thing I've really seen him in besides this movie. And I liked him in that well enough. I liked that movie kind of, maybe despite odd casting. Like I don't love Drew Barrymore.
Sure.
But or as a performer in this kind of movie, I should say. I like Drew Barrymore very much as like a romantic comedy, spills the coffee on herself and giggles sort of type.
Or as Drew Barrymore in real life.
Or as Drew Barrymore in real life, who is a delight. Exactly. But this was maybe a strange choice for her and possibly for him too. But he is supposed to, it is almost an enemies to lovers. Like, you know, he's
Sure.
kind of a dipshit at first. And then, you know, secretly the prince has a heart of gold. But I don't know.
What do you think of Scott as Sean Ambrose in this film? Giving his best Sean Bean in Goldeneye, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, I see what he is doing. I feel like he got the assignment slightly wrong and is giving way more Bond energy than Mission Impossible energy, but I don't hate that. And I think it actually works best for me when he looks so emotional about Nyah.
Yeah.
That he's just kind of losing his shit. I find it very unsettling.
That's the thing. I think that there are moments where he absolutely works, and there are a lot of moments where he does not,
Yeah, it seems like
unfortunately.
the cooler he's trying to be, the less I think he's good.
But he's caught between two different worlds, two different kinds of, well, at least two different worlds. Because on the one hand, we have this Bond-style megalomaniacal villain, which is
Right.
not, I think, the mode in which he is best suited to the material.
He sure got the lair for it, though.
He certainly does.
Right?
We've got the love interest side of the story, right? He manages to sell, I
Yeah.
think, both his obsession with and sense of betrayal by Nyah, I think,
agree.
very well. But then we're also doing this thing where he's a mirror for Ethan, right? Not only is he
Yeah.
impersonating Ethan repeatedly through the course of the film, but he is kind of like the dark shadow. We're doing
Yeah.
classic second movie material here by inverting the hero and making that the villain. But that doesn't sell at all. I think it's
No.
very difficult to track that as a character piece, as a character study, partly, of course, because Ethan is so unanchored in this film, too, that it's really hard to relate these two characters together, except
Yeah.
for the fact that they kind of look a little bit alike.
Right. Which
You
I
know?
didn't even really notice until we have the whole motorcycle race clash.
Yeah.
And it's like, I really do need Tom Cruise to take that jacket off because otherwise I don't know who's fighting who.
You didn't need him to take the jacket off because those bikes were color-coded.
No, this is after they've jumped off the bikes
sorry.
and
When they're
embraced
on the
in the
beach,
air
yes.
and fallen to the beach.
Yeah, that moment of wild homoerotic subtext
Roughly
that has
26 minutes into the motorcycle
I know.
chase.
It's so that's a pretty significant tumble down onto that sand beach too.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
like 30 feet down onto
yeah,
that. Yeah.
they both should have been just wiped out after that, I think. Just concussions.
We talked, of course, about Tendiwe Newton back in our episode on Interview with the Vampire.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, Cruz is not the one who thinks of her for this film. She is recommended for this film by Nicole Kidman, who worked
I know
with her
her.
in 1991 on a movie called Flirting, which is Newton's debut, and which
Wow.
I think we should track down. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's available anywhere, but we should definitely
I usually like flirting.
try and watch that show. You're a big fan of pro flirting in this
Pro
house.
flirting.
Yes. Let's talk a little about Brendan Gleeson, who was born in Dublin in 1955 and who just has, I mean, the most outrageous filmography, right? Braveheart and 28 Days Later and Cold Mountain and Troy and Harry Potter and Paddington 2, in which he is genuinely magnificent. Do you remember the name of the character that Brendan Gleeson plays in Paddington 2, Elizabeth?
Oh, what a great question. Is it Knuckles?
Oh my God. Can you give me his last name for bonus points?
Oh my God, I was right. It was Knuckles?
It's Knuckles.
Knuckles something, probably. Knuckles
You're
McGee.
so right. You're outrageously close. Knuckles McGinty.
McGinty.
Paddington 2 is an extremely good film. Brendan Gleeson is brilliant in it and manages to sell both the malice and the heart of that character
yes,
beautifully.
it's true.
To what degree, on a scale of 9.5 to 10,
Oh,
would
dear.
you say that he is miscast in this film?
Yes, quite. 9.7. Yeah.
Not least of all because
yeah.
why is he doing a very strange, received pronunciation English accent?
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of weird accent work happening in this movie.
Well, yes, I know you were bothered by the accent work in this film.
Yeah.
Some of that is a product, of course, of this era of Hollywood shooting for cheap in Australia.
Sure.
We shoot a little bit in Utah, of course, because we get the climbing sequence up
Oh,
front.
yeah.
All of the Spain stuff is shot in California. The rest of
Sure.
the movie is shot in Australia, which means that you get Richard Roxburgh, excellent Australian actor Richard Roxburgh, doing a weird South African accent.
Yeah, it's weird. Do you remember the moment where we first hear from the walkie-talkie where he says, oh God, what is it? He and Ethan Hunt have just had their little tussle in the hallway and there's been an explosion and we hear the walkie-talkie and he says something about how the rats reach the end of the maze and he's going to bring it in. And it's so clearly Tom Cruise trying to do the Richard Roxburgh accent, which is already a little bit weird anyway. And then when they bring him in the scene, they're just like, fuck that. It's just Richard Roxburgh.
I kind of loved it, though. I kind of loved it.
You
It's a little bit.
It's a little bit adorable.
It's a little bit adorable. I actually like very much. I mean, you have to accept that we have stepped 4 years into the future, and now we're in a crazy sci-fi world with the masks and the voice changers.
And the voice changers.
The voice changers. I think all of that stuff is introduced so elegantly at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
I think that opening sequence really, asserts the reality of this fiction.
Of this wild fiction.
In a very powerful way, and really communicates everything that it needs to communicate. I think it puts its best foot forward for sure.
Yeah. So much better than the weird prosthetics they had Cruz in to be the senator, which was like the least effective thing about that movie. So I'm glad that they
we're just going
that.
full CGI.
Yes, full CGI.
Full CGI face replacement.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it works pretty well for me. We also should mention Anthony Hopkins, who takes a paycheck of $5 million for his one scene performance in this film. He then donates it all to charity.
Aw.
But yeah, he just wanted to up his quote, I think, and just say, well, I got $5 million for Mission Impossible 2 for being very sleepy in one scene and really draining the energy out. I think they probably shot those at the same time. They maybe didn't even tell him they were shooting the second one. Draining all of the pace and energy out of this movie in a 6-minute scene that should be at most 40 seconds.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I don't dislike it so much.
Wow.
I think because, again, at this time in my life, I had such affection for Anthony Hopkins because I think of Meet Joe Black, which I was just so enamored of.
Yeah.
Which must be right around this time, right?
A couple of years earlier. But and Remains of the Day, of course. And no, I think
which
The
I
World,
hadn't seen,
he
but
just done Zorro. So The World in general is kind of warm on Anthony Hopkins at this point. And he's kind of in his elder statesman avuncular mode that he's then basically going to remain in for 20 years.
Oh, and Hannibal. Yeah,
sure.
For sure. And I liked Hopkins.
I don't think that he works in this film. I think this is
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah,
doesn't bother me. But I respect
a sleepy performance that is also home to some of the worst lines of dialogue.
Oh God, yeah. And he's a real dickbag.
Yeah,
let's
some
not
of the most
pretend.
Outright rank misogyny that we get to.
Yeah.
He totally sets up a classic Mission Impossible villain who is going to be revealed in the third act, right? He's the guy who gives Hunt the mission, but really at the end it turns out he was manipulating everything behind it.
John Voight,
but he's not. Yeah, he's not a John Voight. He's just a dick.
Yeah, interesting.
The movie is released May 24th, 2000 and makes $546 million off of a budget of $120 million, making it the most expensive movie of John Woo's career and the most successful and the highest grossing film of the year 2000. Cool. It opens
really?
The highest grossing, yeah.
Okay.
It opens #1 at the box office with a first weekend take of $71 million, which breaks the record for Paramount releases. Second in the box office that week is the second week of Disney's Dinosaur. Do you remember Dinosaur, the CGI photorealistic, but what if dinosaurs were real? No one really remembers this film.
Not really.
It was the most expensive film of the year 2000. It's a lot of relatively early CGI. Yeah, because it hasn't aged at all well.
I know I've said that like 80 times and everyone's tired of hearing it, but
it is at least cheaper than making real dinosaurs.
Sure.
At least until we,
Dino DNA.
Exactly. Until we find the right piece of amber. Third at the box office is the opening weekend of Shanghai Noon, the Owen Wilson, Jackie Chan action comedy.
Yeah.
Wild going up against Mission Impossible 2. What were you thinking, guys?
Terrible
what were you
cowboy
thinking?
Name.
Fourth is the fourth week of a little movie called Gladiator.
Gladiator is terrific. I keep saying that. What I mean to say is my memory of Gladiator is that it is terrific, and I hope that is true.
We'll be able to return to that world very soon in Gladiator 2. From there, we can fast forward down the movie charts to number 10, where Natalie Portman is still pregnant in a Walmart in Where the Heart Is.
An Oklahoma movie. Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Well, I don't know for sure that it was shot here, but the book takes place here, and you can tell it's an Oklahoma movie because there's a tornado in it.
That movie has already, by this point, made $29 million. And we forget,
man.
I think, what a commercial success that film was off of a very small budget. Natalie Portman, usually so good, occasionally so very bad.
You think she was bad in that?
No, I think she's terrific in that.
Okay.
But I just had to suffer through Vox Lux because I was planning on making it a bonus episode for Stars and Swords, my genre fiction series.
Yeah.
And I'm never watching that film again.
I'm
primarily never watching that film again because she is so awful. It is such a misguided performance in a film that is replete with misguided choices, honestly. But wow, as a central performance, it stinks. It stinks. It's particularly bad because she's performing alongside Raffi Cassidy, who is the young girl from Tomorrowland, Brad Bird's Tomorrowland.
Yes.
To bring it back to something adjacent to Mission Impossible, right? And a film that I really like. I think I like a lot more than most people. She's so terrific in
she's a great
Tomorrowland, and is
actress.
actually really quite good in this film too. They make the wild choice to have her play the lead character of the film. Then, after a significant time jump, a time jump of 16 or 17 years, that character is now played by Natalie Portman, and Raffi Cassidy is playing her own daughter in a really weird choice.
That is weird. Yeah.
It's an odd one, but a very bad film that you kind of have to pin on Natalie Portman at least a little
What a shame.
bit. But Where the Heart is beautiful and a really, really sweet film. The other film that's also clogging up the bottom of the box office right now is Battlefield Earth, dying in the dust down in number 12, having made almost all of the $21 million it will ever make off of a budget of $70 million.
Is that also a Travolta one?
Travolta,
Yeah.
that's L. Ron Hubbard. That's L. Ron Hubbard's actual science fiction novel,
Jesus.
Battlefield Earth. So this is it. This is the two extremes of the Scientology spectrum here in the year 2000.
Jesus.
You have John Travolta dying in Battlefield Earth and Mission Impossible being the most successful film of the year.
Yeah.
And that is all of the background material that we have. So normally this is where we would move into a beat by beat, but I really enjoyed the way that we conversed last week about Magnolia, where we couldn't do a beat by beat because that film is so anarchic in its structure. And we can't do a beat by beat this week because I don't want to.
Okay.
I don't think that is the best way of looking at this film. Do you?
It's probably not. No, I agree. We don't need to beat by beat.
So we can kind of gloss the larger movements of the plot and just
let's
talk
maybe
about what
even
stands
just
out
act
positively.
1, Act 2, Act 3.
Yeah,
Does that sound more or less?
If the film had agreed to array itself in acts for our enjoyment, then maybe we could do that.
Okay.
We can at least begin with the beginning. We can talk about this great sequence, I think. Well, I guess we begin with something that is at least provocative, right? We begin with the Russian scientist. We get the bleached out shot of the kids playing in the street.
So much style happening.
So much style. You're absolutely right.
The lighting throughout the movie, I think, is really cool and evocative.
It is. It is occasionally very late 90s. It feels occasionally very the year 2000 very specifically.
Totally.
But, even that is a kind of style.
And I've said before, I think when we were doing our Gone in 60 Seconds bonus episode, that there's something about that like early 2000s, late 90s lighting that I still really like. And I don't know if it's ingrained in me in kind of that nostalgic sort of way, or if it's something that appeals to me just, so deep in my bones that I always like it.
You're absolutely right to draw that comparison. I hadn't thought of it because Gone in 60 Seconds doesn't live in my head the way that it lives in yours.
Nor should it.
That is the closest film that we've seen to Mission Impossible 2, I think, during this entire run.
Definitely.
If you guys haven't heard our Gone in 60 Seconds episode, well, it's a Patreon exclusive. You can head on over to patreon.com/nextword. Pledge your support. Help us make more of these episodes and get access to all of those bonus episodes. The Gone in 60 Seconds one is really fun.
It's kind of fun, actually. Yeah.
So we get that short introduction to, I guess we nod toward the virus that is going to be the heart of this film, the MacGuffin of this film. But it's okay. We'll get that information 4 or 5 more times in the course of the movie. We get Dougray Scott playing Sean Ambrose, playing Ethan Hunt, playing Dimitri.
Yes. There's so much happening, but yeah.
I really like this. I think it works
it's a fun opening.
great.
Yeah.
I think that Richard Roxburgh can hold a camera. I think he is so good at holding a shot. I think William Mapother looks great in this movie.
Great. Is that what we're saying?
I think he looks great. Do you not think he looks great?
He looks like such a douchey tool from the year 2000.
I think that's exactly what the script calls for. Yeah.
They nailed it.
This is the third Cruz movie that Mapother will appear in. He will also appear in Vanilla Sky, and he will appear uncredited in Minority Report. And if you are new to The Last Star in Hollywood, we should mention that William Mapother is Tom Cruise's cousin.
Yes.
Tom Cruise's real name, Tom Cruise Mapother.
Yep.
I think he's great. Ethan Rom from Lost.
That was my first thought. It's like Lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for a second, I thought Richard Roxburgh was also from Lost before. I was like, oh, wait, that's not why I remember him.
Do you know what you do remember him from?
Well, is he the Duke in Moulin Rouge?
He is the Duke in Moulin Rouge.
Excellent.
Yes.
That might be the one. And then
That's
I've also seen
probably his
him
highest profile role for sure.
I've seen him live on stage with Toby Schmitz, and I should have said Kate Blanchett first, probably, but
no, I think you said what you said, and you meant it.
I said what I said. I don't take it back. And he was terrific.
Richard Roxburgh's IMDb known for is Van Helsing from 2004, which sucks.
Sure.
Moulin Rouge from 2001, a movie called Sanctum from 2011, and a TV show called Rake. He appeared in 40 episodes of a TV show called Rake between 2010 and 2018. He is the lead in this. It looks like it is a British crime drama.
Sure. Yeah. The British crime dramas with like their hard-boiled detectives. They really love those.
This isn't hard-boiled detective. This is full-on gowns and wigs solicitors. This is lawyers.
When you said gowns and wigs, I was thinking, wait, rake, like a rakish man who's going to come and bust open my corset, or, some other woman's bodice or corset. I don't know.
Some other woman.
I'm just saying. I would watch that, but less interested in the weird wigs they wear to court for some reason.
Sure.
Because tradition, I guess.
That's the main reason everyone does everything in Britain. I don't understand. It's always been done like that. Yeah. Otherwise, how would we know you were a lawyer? So overall, what do you think of this high concept, high energy, high octane introduction to this movie? The whole sequence on the plane.
I think the sequence on the plane is cool. I really like it. I love everybody passing out and then him looking around, the doctor looking around, and it's in the oxygen. It's just all cool. I don't know. It's just neat.
It's really good, I think, too. Yeah.
I like that we're tipped off that this is not, in fact, Ethan Hunt, just by that. He just gives, and it's Tom Cruise, gives this like devilish, impish, and you're like, ooh, this is not our Ethan Hunt.
I absolutely want to commend Cruise for all of the performances that he gives as Ambrose
Dougray
playing
Scott?
Hunt. I think he's excellent.
Agreed.
Absolutely reliably excellent. Yeah.
Totally
and not
good.
getting that little, I'm sorry, you're sorry, not getting that little interchange that they've obviously shared in the past, this intimate thing, and giving that blank look is so strong. It's
So
a
strong.
really, really great performance. Then we cut, of course, to the real Ethan Hunt, who is climbing a rock. Because of course you do. That's how you introduce a character in a movie.
I think this sequence is so cool.
It is extremely cool.
I'm so glad you agree with me.
Yeah, no, of course.
Oh, good. You said we were going to, maybe be on opposite ends of everything in this movie, but I'm
Maybe
really
not
glad
everything.
that we're
No,
happy
I think this
about
is
one.
like, it's very
It made me sweaty.
silly. It's cartoonish almost.
You kind of expect Wile E. Coyote to come like careening around the corner.
No, we're never going to see that film.
I'm sorry?
You're giving me a blank look. Did you keep up with the news about
Wile E. Coyote? I did not.
Coyote versus Acme, the Will Forte John Cena movie, a comedy movie starring an animated Wile E. Coyote? It was a complete film that Warner Brothers made and then shelved. They burned it as a tax deduction. It is the grossest thing to do. Like, I can even be more forgiving of just run something on your streaming service and then cut it. Like, that's a shitty thing to do, but whatever. Making a complete film and then burning it so that you can profit off of its destruction is disgusting
gross.
And is disrespectful of the time and effort put in by every single person employed on that project.
It's so much time and effort.
So much
Having
time
never done
and
anything
effort.
like a feature film and only doing things that run like 12 or 15 minutes. I guess the longest was ours, ran 23?
Sure.
It's a shit ton of work, you guys. Yeah.
It is reprehensible to destroy that film. Even if that film was going to be bad, right? There's a
Even if it's gonna be
decent
bad.
chance that that film would suck, and certainly it's unlikely that I would ever see it, but still, don't do that.
Yep.
What do you think of Ethan Hunt's look in this movie, particularly as he's climbing here Dead Horse Point in Utah?
Okay. This look is not good. Overall, I like his
Right.
look, but this one is weird. It's mostly the tank top. Tom Cruise ought not to wear tank tops.
Interesting.
Yeah, it emphasizes his petiteness in a way that does not perhaps put him at his best.
The other thing that we're getting from Cruise throughout this movie is this weird electric horniness that we've had in the last few films. This is the third in his weird electric horny trilogy that he's made.
Trilogy, he says.
Don't you think?
Tell me more.
Eyes Wide
No.
Shut, Magnolia, this movie. This is Tom
Well,
Cruise.
Eyes Wide Shut like purports to be horny, but it's certainly not.
But his character is at least, or is misidentifying that. It is a hornier Cruise than we have seen in previous films.
Fair.
Certainly.
Yes.
And we've now done it 3 movies back to back to back. And I don't even remember in Vanilla Sky. I think Vanilla Sky is a little bit horny too. But I think that is the last time. I think that we kind of burn it out of him then. And he will go on to be a weird, asexual stunt performer for the rest of his career.
Interesting. Maybe so. I don't get the horniness yet from him here, except that he's trying to be so cool in that 2000s
Oh, you
Oakley
mean
sort of way.
within the bounds of the film, you don't get horniness while he is rock climbing.
Right.
You'll get that later in a bathtub with Tendu and Newton.
Yes,
Okay.
precisely. Yeah. But you think that they're shooting for that now?
No, I think there is something to his physicality that is almost predatory. That is it's difficult not to see aspects of the performance from Magnolia leaking into his performance here as Ethan, right? And I don't think that that's
interesting.
accidental. I think he's trying to tap into some of that some of that, I don't know, more physical, more masculine, right? He's sweaty in this film, and
Sure.
his long hair is just a little less kept than it's been previously, right? He's just a little wilder, maybe.
Yeah.
He's a little closer to the edge than we're used to seeing him.
Yes.
And that is manifesting uncomfortably for me. This is not my preferred mode of Tom Cruise.
Okay. Interesting. All right. I can
Not
see that.
that a character in this role can't be sexy. I think characters in this role should almost definitively be sexy.
Yeah.
But, this is not entirely working for me.
Okay.
But
Okay. Fair
the
enough.
rock climbing, for all that, is great. He flat out lies to the insurance company offering protection for this film, by the way. He says that he will not engage in any stunt work, that it will all be done by stunt professionals. He does 85% of his own stunts in this film.
The part where he has his knees like stacked into
I
that crevice in the
dislike
rock.
that so much.
Listen, I know that the part that's supposed to make you sweat is when he's hanging by like his fingertips, but that's not it for me.
Yeah.
It's the knees. Holy smokes.
So
It's a real trust in physics.
It is. He does climb this bluff, this rock for real in real life. He does have a pack and a very thin wire that can be digitally removed, but that is just for safety. But all of the actual climbing is really him.
Wow.
He tears his shoulder too when he's doing the jump.
Ooh,
He tears one of the muscles in his shoulder, and they have to reset for a week.
Ow.
Yeah.
Terrible.
This is, I think, maybe not quite the beginning of Cruz being so dedicated to his stunt performance that it becomes almost self-parodic.
Yes.
But we're real close to it, I think. We're real close to that being an established part of Ethan Hunt's character, certainly, but also of Tom Cruise's real-life persona.
His real life persona. Yeah.
And then we get helicopter, rocket, sunglasses.
Yes, rocket sunglasses. Yes. It's silly. It's dumb. It tells you what the movie's going to be, though.
Say more on that.
The Oakleys are so modern. They do kind of
When you say modern, give me a year on that.
2000.
Okay.
So year 2000. Yeah.
So contemporary, right?
So contemporary.
Yes.
Yeah. We are the coolest thing that you can buy at your local mall right now.
Yes.
If you go to Sunglasses Hut or whatever the fuck you would have gone in 2000. The music is also, is this where we're getting the Limp Bizkit?
This is the Limp
What is
Bizkit.
the thing? I forgot to even say, what is the terrible music that we're getting right before this when he is climbing?
I kind of like the clash of it. I like how, because you're right, it is muted like it's diegetic, right? He doesn't appear to be like wearing a Walkman or whatever.
But it seems like he should.
I kind of like it.
CD pack.
It's Zap Mama, who is a Belgian singer-songwriter. It's her cover of a song called Eco Eco that is a New Orleans song that tells of a parade collision between two tribes of Mardi Gras Indians and the traditional confrontation between them. I have no idea. It's so weird.
Anyway, it's a weird choice.
I kind of like how discordant it is in that scene.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I guess I prefer that to the Limp Bizkit, kind of. But there's something about the Limp Bizkit playing and these Oakleys, which are so contemporary to the times and which also kind of like, I don't know, stylistically foreshadow that cars have gotten better too. Those Oakleys look like a car to me. Is that a stupid thing to say? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like how it follows the line of the body.
They're contoured.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I do appreciate the cars in this film, and I look forward to getting to that part so that
We'll
you can tell me all about them.
Get to it real soon after we've hacked a bathtub. First, we have to move through the CGI excess of the exploding Oakleys and the title sequence itself.
That's kind of fun.
It's
I like the
strong.
chimera that they've got in there.
Yeah.
You see the chimera
that's
worked
pretty
in?
hot.
That was
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, we are all at once in speed-ramped flamenco, which actually looks very good,
So
I think.
cool.
So far, I will say, I am pretty on board with this film. I think that I don't even have a problem with the Oakleys. The delivery of the Oakleys in the rocket is stupid. And I don't like it. And but it's
dumb.
also an excess that isn't really reflected in the rest of the film. The rest of the film is not going to be stupid in that way. It's going to be stupid in completely different ways. So that moment, rocks the boat a little bit for me. But then, speed-ramped flamenco and the introduction of Nyah, who is so gorgeous.
Luminous.
Throughout this film. Okay, but we do have to talk about the super leery camera
terrible.
shots that we get here. Did you know that Tendiwe Newton has breasts?
It would seem that way. We sure like to shoot them. This is the weird thing too. It's like when they're trying to get that angle of Cruz on the bottom of the bathtub, where her cleavage
where we're just shooting
still
all the way down her dress.
Yeah, and she obviously, as an actress, has to throw her head all the way back and get her chin out of the way. And this is not how that would look. What is the POV of this camera? It was just ridiculous. Stupid.
It was that is the shot.
That is the stupid ass, gross,
the most
misogynistic
outrageous. Yeah.
ew shot. Yes.
This
I agree.
is a film that is particularly, I think, bad with its treatment
Yes.
of women. I think that Nyah overall, yeah, as I said, I think that this introduction is so great. She's so interesting. I think that her performance is so textured here.
Mhm.
She gives a great combination, and I think that this is a hard thing to play, of both absolute capability, but also a nervousness and anxiousness and insecurity, right? She's on the edge of her capability in a really interesting way. That's a great place for a character to live.
Mhm.
But then, yeah, she just becomes somewhat static through the rest of the film, except to be passed between these two men or treated with derision by literally everyone else in the film.
Yeah,
Whether it's Anthony
yeah.
Hopkins or it's Richard Roxburgh or it's William Apather, like everyone is just down on Nyah. They're
Yeah.
really down on women.
Mm-hmm.
Does that feel to you more like a product of the year 2000 in film culture, or that this film is particularly bad vis-a-vis women?
I mean, I think it's got year 2000 written all over it. Again, I think that her character is actually pretty great. The situation that they put her in sucks. But I do like that she is, at the top of her game.
Mm-hmm.
I like that we can really track her attraction to Ethan Hunt.
Sure.
And I like that she ultimately makes these decisions for herself. When we get to the point in the back half where she shoots herself with a chimera, I had just written a note. Please tell me that we do not shoot this woman with this drug. But she did it herself.
Yeah.
And that's much cooler. It's just
Yes.
much better. And I also think as much as like we're gross and ogling her in this scene, when she first goes to meet with Sean Ambrose and he gives her the dress and has her try it on, and we see how much she doesn't want to do this in front of him, but does anyway, and we see him ogling her, but the camera never does.
Well, that's not
That was
totally true. We do get a glimpse of her side and side boob as she
That's
is
true.
stripping naked.
A
But it is
glimpse,
a
yeah.
glimpse, and it's not objectifying her in the same way.
Right.
You're right. I think that generally speaking, the film is going to shoot her as a beautiful woman, yes, but not necessarily as a sex object.
Right.
In the way that we shoot her absolutely as a sex object in this
In
opening
the bathtub scene. Yeah, totally.
What do you think of the notion of hacking a bathtub? Pretty cool?
Listen, aside from the bathtub hack itself, that is a great bathtub on a very cool set.
I disagree entirely. The bathtub is very cool, and the bathtub hack is also very cool. What are you talking about?
What would you keep in your bathtub safe?
Lotions, oils, unguents.
My razor, probably for safety
Yeah,
for the
probably,
kids.
right? Little Bluetooth speaker. No, we'd install a fridge. That's where the champagne would be.
Ooh,
Exactly,
See, now
see?
I like it. Hmm.
So obviously we're going for, the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind
Sure.
of dynamic here right up front. What do you think of their professional compatibility? What do you think of their byplay, their banter, their interplay here at this point? Are we getting chemistry right off the bat?
I think that we're getting something like chemistry right off the bat. I think it is weird that this is not like the Ethan Hunt that we've met before, but I also think that this guy is interesting in that James Bond kind of way. I cannot divorce myself from having seen this at 16 and thinking it was great and fun and hot, and that she was very powerful and in control of the situation in a way that I really liked.
I think that's a great reading. Honestly,
And I
think
love
that's
that
a
she's asked.
absolutely defensible reading.
Yeah. Do you mind if I'm on top? And he's like,
Yeah.
either way works for me. But I don't know, there's something very consensual about the two of
Sure.
them that I really like. And I want to say this too, before I forget, that this movie makes us feel time and time again, and it just lays the path for Sean Ambrose to do violence and sexual violence to Nyah, and it never happens. And I really respect that.
Because the half of the story the quarter of the story that is the love story, I think is obsessive, yes, and dark in that way, but is also like well-intentioned in that way. Like it's supposed to be the contrast between a good love and a bad love, not the contrast between a love story and just
Oh, you mean
physical...
Ethan Hunt being good love and
Yeah,
Ambrose?
right. Like that's the notorious side of this, I think.
Although I never get the sense that their relationship was ever healthy or good.
It's interesting. We don't really understand why they got together or why they
broke
stayed
up.
together.
Yeah.
Why they broke up, I think, is pretty clear. He's a bad guy.
He's a bad guy.
He's a bad guy. She's a roguish good guy. Roguish good guys can't end up with bad guys.
She is a thief. Like she's
but she's a thief in the Catwoman mold. Like she's
Sure.
in the Black Cat, Felicia Hardy.
Yeah.
That's a Spider-Man character. Sorry. She's a thief in the way that women in films like this get to be thieves without actually having
Sure.
any like moral, perspective applied to them.
Grace Kelly into Catch a Thief.
Exactly right,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. Sure.
From there, let's do some car ballet, shall we?
let's do some car ballet because it's so cool.
So this is really, I think, yes, canted angles, yes, aerial acrobatics, yes, birds, absolutely. This is the John Woo fingerprint. This externalization of the self into technology, into machinery, right? Whether it is cars or guns or motorcycles, as we'll see later.
Interesting.
This is the John Woo thing. And the representation of these two bodies in motion as incarnated into their vehicles is... It's really dumb, but it's also really good.
I think it's so fun. Yeah. No, I think this is really cool. This is among my favorite, like, car chase sequences ever. It's
really?
Just really neat. Especially the two cars spinning in tandem and the two of them looking at each other.
I mean, that's the moment, right?
She's feeling just a little bit like she's out of control of it, but he's feeling so much that he's in control of it. And then she's like, then they kiss and it's hot. I don't know. I just like it.
I think the moment, because it's that progression, right?
Yeah.
She is distracted by him. We cut back to Ethan, who says, watch the road, because she's not paying attention to what they're actually doing. So she goes off the left side of the road, careers back toward the right. He hits her just so that they can spin together and not quite go off the edge of the cliff. And then she will climb back up into the car and straddle him. And then we cut to sex. It's outrageous that we cut to sex this quickly in a film of this sort.
Yeah.
Not even Bond,
not really
traditionally.
To sex, to the aftermath
No, that's
of
true.
sex.
But yeah, it's unusual for our lead characters to wind up in bed this early in the movie. And then for the lead characters to stick around through the whole movie, right?
True.
Because traditionally, if your main guy has sex with a woman in the first act, particularly if that woman is presented as the love interest, she is going to die in order to motivate him. And that doesn't happen here, which is really interesting, I think.
That's true.
Do you buy their intimacy? Does their intimacy work for you when they wake up the morning after and he's weirdly touching her face and then weirdly touching her neck, which don't touch someone's neck when they're sleeping. Also, no one in history has ever slept like that. So I don't know what to say.
I didn't remember him touching her before she woke up. I remembered him looking at her.
Yeah, no, he reaches out and just kind of touches her jawline and her neck. And it's a little weird.
Is it weird?
Yeah, just a little bit.
I believe you.
But it's also because she is so artfully composed, right? The artifice of the composition is such that I don't buy that she is asleep. So it's weird that she is keeping her eyes closed while he is touching her. It's one of these like odd.
It also feels like this is the moment where he wakes up and she's gone and all of his stuff is gone.
Exactly.
You know? But
that's
instead,
the other beat. You're completely right. That's how we would maybe even get to, and then she dies at the end of the first act.
Absolutely.
Is that, she would be gone and she would have taken, the necklace or the key card or whatever it was that she was stealing from the night before. Yeah. But no, she's just going to hang around, and then we're going to have to explain why she disappears from the rest of the story in due course. This, though, I think, pretty strong, pretty good opening. It's got a lot of style. It's got a lot of kineticism. It's got a real sense of itself. And then I can't emphasize enough how catastrophic Anthony Hopkins is in this film. I think this scene is so bad.
Yeah.
I think it's a bad scene by any measure, but it's the worst for a film like this that is kind of depending on you just going with it, right? We've had the car ballet, so we just have to be invested. And 6 minutes of this flat-ass dialogue and casual misogyny, it stinks. Give me not a defense, but tell me what you like about this scene at least.
I don't know why I don't hate this one so much. I guess it's because when we have this other guy who's above Ethan Hunt and he's a real dick, it makes the what would otherwise be problematic and is still probably problematic, like more, again, benevolent misogyny of Ethan Hunt look kinder and gentler.
Okay,
so
sure.
It's kind of a nice foil to Hunt in that way.
I can see that. Certainly your hero is elevated by standing next to someone who is
who's so vile,
deeper in the swamp than they are.
When he says something about like, of course she can have sex with men and lie to them. She's a woman.
To go to bed with a man and lie to him, she's a woman. She's got all the training she needs.
Right?
Shut up.
But then Ethan Hunt's face right then where he's like, you motherfucker.
Yeah.
You old gross man. I love it.
That's not my least favorite of Anthony Hopkins' lines. My least favorite of Anthony Hopkins' lines. And I really do read this as the actor just not being sufficiently invested in the scene. He's maybe already decided that he's donating this paycheck to charity. He gets the line, in any case, you must recover this, whatever, chimera and bring it to us.
I love that.
Straight whatever?
I loved the whatever. It's so funny that you say that. And also the fact that Anthony Hopkins delivered it like a true whatever and not like a somebody's making me say whatever, so I'm going to find a way to like squeeze it in here, but you
yes,
felt
you're
that
right.
way?
It's extremely naturalistic, which given this performance makes me think that it was just him
That's amazing.
and not a character. Yeah.
I choose to believe that it was an excellent performance by Sir Anthony Hopkins.
I
but,
love
you
the
know.
idea of leaning into the idea that Sir Anthony Hopkins is performing parody in the heart of this film. Oh, wouldn't it be funny if I showed up and gave like this super flat, boring, sleepy performance? That'll show them. From there, we cut out to the balcony scene, which, yeah, we've talked about a little already. I think this scene is bad because it structurally has to do so much
do a lot.
connect these two characters who are already partly connected. And she's all of a sudden upset because their connection's just physical and not emotional like she thought it would be, because you know how women are? It's not great.
I think this might be one of the only time where maybe her performance is lacking just a little bit. Maybe she has a whole lot that she has to give, and maybe she's not quite giving it here.
I think it is the script. I
think
the script is so far beneath both of them, honestly. I think they both are bad in this scene, and the writing is just not there. Yeah. I think that of all the scripts that we've seen from Robert Towns, this is by far the weakest, and there's nothing here that that gives any depth or sophistication beyond like a literal first draft. Like, this is basically, it's almost as though Tendie Way Newton looks into the camera and says, placeholder dialogue here to motivate my character.
Yes. Yeah. No, I see what you mean.
And Tom Cruise replies, flirty banter that will motivate my character and establish my heterosexuality. Like,
I wonder how much I'm moved by the lovely table setting and the great little slip dress that she gets and the balcony and maybe I'm just liking this world a lot.
Yeah, that's actually something I wanted to talk to you about. How do you feel about the production design through this sequence in particular, everything that happens in Spain?
In general, everything in Spain I love. Yeah, Spain definitely is the wow moment when it comes to production design. And also the Biosite Technology Center or whatever, or a pharmaceutical company, which is a very different kind of design, but obviously people went all the way to bat
They
for
sure
it.
did, yeah.
But everything about Spain makes me, which I know it's California, but still, I'm like, I would move there today. Let's go.
They were asked, Wu was asked where he wanted this sequence to take place, because it really doesn't matter where in the world that this sequence takes place. And he chose Spain because he had just fallen in love with flamenco and wanted the opportunity to shoot it.
I get it.
Which I think is so great.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Unfortunately, all in California, but there it is.
Yeah.
From there, we jump to Sydney, where we will spend effectively the rest of the film, and we're introduced to Billy, about which I have nothing to say.
Yeah, he's fine.
He's fine.
I like him as much as I like Simon Pegg. Not as much, but not,
Damn's fighting words.
Listen, which is why I backed off a little bit. Please don't email me. I just mean that character just is what it is. He's comic relief guy.
I think he's fine, but
I'm not
sure.
Funny at the racetrack when he's in the uniform.
Sure.
I think he's at his best there.
I'm not sure why, when Ethan Hunt is putting together his IMF team and he's allowed to take 2 and only 2 agents, he chooses Luther, which makes a lot of sense. And this
guy
rando,
he's never met, he's introduced to.
Filter for comic relief,
Australia.
filter for cheap local talent. Oh, yeah, Billy. That's who we'll choose.
He'll do it for $200 a day. Yeah. Fair enough.
Filter by per diem. What do you make of this version of Luther as he's presented to us in this one? Because all of a sudden Luther is fancy. All of a sudden Luther has expensive shoes and a Versace jacket. And what? Does he?
I don't know why, but I like it. I think it's funny. And I don't remember enough about Luther in the first movie.
Really? Okay.
What I remember is their lovely conversation at the very end outside the cafe.
That's what you get from Luther in the first film, is like earnestness. It's like emotional availability. It's like, I'm your guy.
I do miss that.
Yeah.
But I also get why 4 years later, after everything went so fucking bad in that last film, why he might, just have a different exterior. You know what I'm saying?
What's happened here is that Luther has just become Ving Rhames.
Yes.
And the reason that he's dressed all fancy is that he got a really big paycheck from Mission Impossible 1, which was a very successful movie. From there, this is an awful scene that I think has no real place in the film. And were I responsible at Paramount for this movie, I would have cut this scene in its entirety, because we're going to cut to Ambrose and the cigar cutter. I just said cut 4 times in that sentence because I'm foreshadowing.
Yes.
The cigar cutter and the tip of Richard Roxburgh's finger.
It's upsetting. The robe is good.
Yes.
Yeah, this is some James Bond villainy here.
It is exactly
Yeah.
James Bond villainy.
Yeah.
Yes. And I
And then
don't
he opens the floor and drops him in with the sharks who smell the blood.
only
and-
after monologuing about his master plan to take over the world by stealing all the gold from Fort Knox.
What
Yes.
do they
no,
have
exactly.
Brendan Gleeson do? It's so weird.
It's such a weird choice.
It's
of
a weird
character.
choice. That's the one that I would be like, we have to fix this.
It's not that you can't hire Brendan Gleeson for this, and I'm always glad when Brendan Gleeson
When he
gets
gets work.
a paycheck.
We love that. Love to see it.
But if you're going to have Brendan Gleeson,
Mhm.
why not make him good? Why
Why
not
not?
allow him to be
Yeah.
good? I guarantee he could have given a better performance than this if he wasn't constrained by presumably the demand in the script to be the straightest version of this character that we've
Sure,
ever seen.
sure.
We'll get to him in very short order, in fact, because we're going to cut to the racetrack and we're going to spend about 20 minutes there. And maybe it's too long. Maybe that's just too much time to spend at a racetrack in Sydney, Australia. Does this sequence work for you?
It does. It's another sequence that I remember about how, like, wow, how the other half live, I suppose.
Okay, sure.
Maybe? I don't know. There are things about it that I like. I think that Billy is funny here. I like how much she has to be on her feet and how careful she has to be and how she doesn't
Yes.
drop the ball. She drops the envelope, but she picks it back up again. And
Well, she
it's not-
also blows it by
She blows
returning
it
it
in
to
the
the
end,
wrong
to the
pocket.
wrong
Could
jacket
we
pocket,
say
which
left
is-
jacket pocket more times?
Could we say
in
it
this
more
script?
times? Yeah. And I know that she's rattled.
Yeah. I don't love that. I don't love that she just gets the pocket wrong. I don't love that she
You're
makes
right,
an
you're
actual
right.
mistake.
I guess that's
whereas,
true. That's the very last thing that happens there. But up until then, I love everything. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
having her make that mistake is a mistake. I think I would rather just have him notice because
because he just notices,
he just
right?
notices.
We elevate everyone.
Yeah.
When everyone involved is smart,
yeah.
then a rising tide and all ships and all that. I think that
Mhm.
making her just screw up which pocket it was in, make a
Yeah.
silly mistake like that, like she's not paying sufficient attention.
You're right.
It
That's
just
not good.
reduces the capability of everyone involved, because then it's also not impressive that he notices it. Like,
Exactly.
oh, she
yeah.
put it back in the wrong. Like, it's not just
Which,
that
if
he
you think
notices,
about it, like,
but it's the wrong. He's,
In what universe would I use my left hand to put something in my right jacket pocket? Like,
Right.
that's just not how I do things.
but
It's
she
not
also
where that would
has
be.
to reach all the way across his chest to do it. It's
Yeah. No, it's just, it doesn't work.
I also structurally don't totally understand why we are here for. This is the third time that we're going to be introducing Chimera and
Oh yeah, and this is where we get Gleason and where we figure out who he's selling to and blah blah blah. Yeah,
yes, but not quite. We're not quite at the scene yet where Gleason gives his version of all of this exposition. First of all, we've just got to steal the
Oh,
memory
yeah,
card and look at all the pictures and
Sure.
the footage of what Chimera will do in the absence of Bill Afron, the counter agent, I
Mhm.
guess. It does just feel a little insecure, and it does feel as though something has been shuffled in the edit here a little bit to
Possibly.
already establish this information twice, right? We get it right at the beginning of the film. Anthony Hopkins gives it to us. Now we get it from Ving Rhames via digital camera and SD card, and then we're going to get it again from
Yeah.
Brendan Gleeson in just a minute.
yeah,
It's a little
fair.
soft.
Maybe too much.
Let's cut ahead to Brendan Gleeson leaving work at the end of the day, getting into his limousine, driving off, finding the newspaper, which contains the story of his own death. And I
Yeah.
need to know which of Sean Ambrose's crew mocked up this newspaper and got it printed.
It's so
And also,
silly.
like, aged it just enough to make it look like it was from earlier in the day. Like,
So
someone here is
silly.
just really
Yeah.
enthusiastic about
Yeah.
print layouts, I guess. I think it was Mapother. I'm going to say that it was Mapother.
It's very silly. And then of course gassing him in the car. This is also like very Bondian.
Yes,
Yes.
gassing him in the car so that we can interrogate him while
Yeah.
pretending to be the Russian scientist.
Yeah, who he knows to be dead, but he's like, oh, it's a fever dream. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
what are we saying?
And
This is bad.
I
agree.
don't
It's
know
bad.
why Ethan Hunt is engaging in this charade, because I don't think that we get any new information. I guess the new information that we get, right, is that the reason the Chimera virus is engineered is so that he can sell a lot of the counter agent. This is financial. This is just a company trying to make money, that it was engineered deliberately to create a need for the counter agent, right?
I think so.
That's
yes.
what Gleason says in
That's
this scene,
yes.
at
Mhm.
least. Yeah. The next thing I think that crops up in my notes, at least, is, well, I guess we get fake Ethan telling Nyah to stay with Ambrose.
Great sequence.
I think really good.
I think
Yeah.
really good. Yeah.
Particularly intercut with the sequence with Gleason. I like the way that both of these characters are using masks to different effects at the
Yep.
same time. Like, this is some mirroring that I think that I would have liked this film more if it had gone further into the idea of these two characters being reflective of one another.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't sustain it enough that it gains any kind of momentum. But in this moment, again, hats off to Cruz for delivering a powerful performance as Ambrose playing Hunt. I
Yeah,
think it's
you really
so
see
good.
how good it is when the mask is removed.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
when you're like, wow.
When
okay,
he flinches,
there.
when Nyah's about to kiss him and he flinches
Yeah.
back, and it's that mode of like, I don't know how he communicates in just his face that he is upset because she is trying to kiss someone who is not
Yeah.
him, even
Uh-huh.
though he is right there. It's so good.
It's good.
It's so
It's
good.
good stuff.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree.
She's also so vulnerable and brilliant in that moment. And I don't necessarily love that we're making her completely vulnerable, especially
Right.
completely emotionally dependent on Ethan.
Right.
But you buy her fear, I
Yes.
think, as she's moving through Ambrose's very the year 2000 house.
Yes, and surrounded by all of these male henchmen who want her dead, and it's clear
Absolutely.
that they want her
Who
dead.
don't trust her
Yes,
from the
and
jump.
don't, right,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
No, I buy it.
Then we get to the big heist sequence, the infiltration of Biosite, and maybe
I want this to be cooler for the infiltration because
the infiltration itself, yeah,
Right?
is maybe a little simplistic, and obviously dropping from the ceiling is kind of tropey now
well, the
after
thing is,
doing
like,
it in
we
the first
did it
movie.
so well in the first movie
Yeah.
that to like almost do it but not do it cool seems like a weird choice.
The thing that I love about this sequence is
Mm-hmm.
Ambrose completely predicting every step of Hunt's plan.
Yeah,
That he won't go in through the ground floor. He doesn't want to confront security. He's going to try and find another way. He's going to come in from the roof. This is how it's all going to work out. And anticipating that perfectly as it rolls out. This is what I'm talking about having your characters be intelligent.
Yes,
Have them,
more interesting.
be smart and read what is really happening and have them anticipate and counter-anticipate. And that stuff, I think, all works really well. Did you notice that after he's done the cable drop into the building and he's descended all the way down and he's got the injector and Ambrose's men open fire, he's reaching for the injector before the glass partition underneath him is shattered and the injector drops. He then does exactly the backflip that he did in Magnolia to get back to his feet. It's so
I didn't
weird.
notice it, but
It's
that's
exactly
great.
the same
Yeah.
maneuver. Then we're into our, extended standoff, so we can banter
Right.
for like 10 full minutes
This
while the
takes a
injector
long
lies
time.
on the floor, where thankfully Nyah shows up just to save the day and inject a little dynamism into the scene. I don't love Hunt and Ambrose just facing. I take that back. I very much love Ambrose right at the beginning. Hello, Ethan. Like, oh yeah, because you guys have not spoken to each other
Yeah.
in this film to date. It's kind of nice, but yeah, the rest of it just feels like maybe we circle the same collection of points 2 or 3 times.
This part's all a lot. It's a little Matrixy for me. It's a lot of gunfire and sparks flying and glass blowing up, and there's just a lot. And
I can tell, looking at you across our recording studio table here, that you are losing energy
No, I'm over
with
it.
the discussion of this film. You're kind of done, right?
because this is when the movie stops being good, I think.
This is the midpoint of the movie.
Well, yeah. I guess we need a little bit more because when some of the stuff in the next, like holding where the fuck they are, like basement-ish type place that has all the birds. Some
Yeah,
of the bird
yeah.
sequence is interesting.
Everything on the
And-
island.
Yeah, and
yeah.
everything after that is pretty terrible.
We're fast forwarding a little too quickly. We do
Okay.
love Nyah injecting herself with the Chimera compound.
as opposed to another male character doing it to her.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
I would have really hated anyone. Yeah, you're right. I
Right?
would have
That
hated
would have
anyone
been like,
injecting
fuck
it
you, I'm
into
turning
her.
this movie off.
But I
Yeah.
love her doing it as a means of securing her safety. She absolutely knows.
But then
that
she
she
says
will-
that she did it without thinking to secure his safety, which
Yeah,
is stupid.
well, I don't like that.
I
but,
know.
Yeah, I do kind of like their moment there. The understanding that he cannot save her. I think that structurally this is really good.
Yep.
And in another movie, this is a really deft bit of
Yeah.
plotting. This idea that he cannot save her. He has to go. He has 20 hours on the clock. That's where we are.
Yep.
Like that's
No, it's good.
strong. And
It's
then
strong.
skydiving out of the building to return another day.
Mhm.
This is when we cut to the island compound and. Yeah, we're just doing a lot, right? We've got
Yes.
we've got this sequence as Ambrose is trying to intimidate Brendan Gleeson. Like, deliver the files, yes, but we are changing the terms of our plan here. And he has this stock options to be a little more precise. Shut up.
Yeah.
Gee, I know it's 2000, but can we just you're a villain. You don't have to take control of 51% of his company. What the hell are you talking
Yeah.
about? Where are those papers going to be filed? What is your residential address, sir? Wanted criminal Sean Ambrose? How do you think you're
Yeah.
going to make any money
Doesn't
through
make any sense.
legitimate manipulation of the stock market? You jackass. It's so much a dumb movie trying to be smart, and
Yep.
I hate it. It's exactly like latter era Pierce Brosnan Bonds.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
But you know what's cooler than $1 million?
Stock options, to be more precise. Good Lord. Nyah gets dumped in the middle of Sydney. Is it weird that we don't see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Make sure you drop her off someplace loaded with people. And the next time we see her, she's wandering around
A
like
cliff
a
top.
barren cliff top. I'm like, somebody is getting fired. Like, what did you think that he meant? Yeah.
It's
weird.
so weird that we don't have a sequence of her being dropped off in
Here's another
a busy
question.
street.
How is Chimera transferred?
That's an excellent question.
It is.
Yeah.
We never find out. Apparently, it's fine to be in close proximity to this person because everybody in the helicopter with her is totally chill.
We can assume then that it only becomes communicable after a certain period?
Yeah, I guess you could.
Is
That could be one thing.
I mean, do we know how much time is left on the clock by the time they get to the island compound?
It's
is it possible
close.
that like within an hour she will be dead?
Yes.
Presumably it is, right?
Presumably
that's
that's
why
what we're
she's on
doing.
the cliff top because
Yes,
I've given
'cause
Ethan
she's
Hunt
about
19
ready.
and a half hours.
Exactly. No.
If he doesn't return my
She's
text,
got
I'm
to be
jumping off
towards
a
the end of
cliff.
it. She's starting to look all sweaty and weird like they
Yeah.
do at hour 20 or hour whatever it is. Yeah.
So
yeah,
presumably,
I don't know.
yes. When she starts manifesting symptoms, that's when she will become communicate. This is the other thing
She
about
looks
this film.
contagious to me.
This is the problem with this film is you can tell a story about this kind of phenomenon in the year 2000. You
After-
can't tell it in
nope.
2024.
And we're like, but who's wearing a mask? No
Yeah.
one's there.
No-
They're
no
all
one's
just
wearing a
breathing
mask.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. You're just gonna jabber with that? You don't even have gloves on? Okay, cool. Is she gonna bleed? Like, listen, I'm just saying. Maybe don't kiss her mouth.
But we don't have time to get bogged down in the details of what the plot of this movie actually is because we have to have a gunfight and then blow open a door
Yes.
so that a glowing dove can fly through it.
The whole thing is very music video.
half of this is pretty cool. Half of this is very silly.
It's very silly.
The glowing
Yeah.
dove through the flaming
glowing-
wreckage of the door.
Slow motion. Too
That
much.
is that is
Too
peak
much.
this movie, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree.
What do you
Uh,
think of the misdirection here with Richard Roxburgh being laid out in the Ethan mask
okay.
and being murdered by Ambrose?
Yeah, it's silly. It's good that he had that mask with him. 2 masks, both masks with him, just in case this particular situation should unfold. You have to guess that there's a Sean Ambrose mask in his bag as well, but he just didn't have to use that one.
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
Like,
Well, he
came
comes prepared, of course. Yeah, no,
I
absolutely.
don't know.
Yeah. I assume that this mask was just somewhere in this compound. That
Oh, yeah. He
that
just came
Ambrose
across
had
it.
brought it himself. I don't know, but
Mm.
Ethan gets the files in any case and escapes, and then we get motorcycle sequence on the island, motorcycle sequence off the island, and then fight on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to pull out from the motorcycle chases?
It is way too long.
It is way too long.
Tom Cruise does look cool on a motorcycle.
I agree. Yeah,
It's something maybe about the compactness of his body.
I think there's
He
something to
does
that.
look very like at one with the machine, which is cool.
Yeah.
The
I do wonder about the strategy of the two people on the motorcycles who try and take Ethan down on the island when they first see him trying to escape.
It's
Ride right at someone is maybe not the best strategy
also
that you
absurd.
have.
Yeah, it's so absurd. This is really where it goes off the rails for me because, like I said, I like a good car chase, and the motorcycle chase should be doubly cool.
Yeah.
But it's just so insane. Remember when he like skis alongside the motorcycle? What are we doing? So that was terrible.
There are a
the two
couple
of them
moments.
colliding in the air.
Yeah. Well, ultimately we get to, right, what's referred to as the motorcycle joust, which
The
I
motorcycle joust.
completely see why. If you're going to be John Woo, if as a person you're going to choose to be John Woo and have his filmography and have his directorial style, this is what you should be doing. Like, it should be, I think, this elevated. It should be this outlandish. But the problem in this film is the tension between this kind of operatic display
Yeah.
and the much more naturalistic action that we get in the rest of the movie.
Sure.
Because this stuff isn't sustainable, I would argue, through the course of an entire film.
Yeah.
It's dramatic.
Yes, it is dramatic. Yeah.
There's something interesting about it. There's something interesting in it that I keep coming back to. There's something thematic about like the divestment of technology, right? There's something about
Oh, throw all these
we
things aside.
we are embodied in our vehicles. We're embodied in our motorcycles, and now we are not, right? They are literally torn away from us, and we fall onto the beach, and it's this primal environment. And then there's guns, but not really, and knives, but not really, right? This is reflected for me in Ethan's decision to like throw the knife at Ambrose's feet and just go at him with his fists. It's like,
I hate that decision. I would like it if he didn't know he was on the fucking clock to save this woman. So he's
That's
like, I'm going
also
to do
true.
this the
Yeah.
hard, slow way with my bare knuckles.
hey, Ambrose,
Like,
I
shut
am not left-handed.
right? Like, what are you even
Yeah.
doing?
So two big
dislike.
things that we should talk about here. The knife in the eye.
Knife
The
in the
knife
eye.
in the eye
I bet
is
you love that. Did you love
extreme-
that, sweetheart?
No, again, Very unusual man. Me. I don't like it when knives are put in people's eyes. It's a strange little, preoccupation that I have. It's all the worse because I found out how they did it, and this is a moment where I think you can get away with CGI, you guys. You don't actually have to use a real knife, which they did.
Oh my God.
They had a knife that was secured with a cable that was suspended above Cruz and Scott so that Scott could put all of his weight on the knife, which is a quarter of an inch. You can see it touch Tom Cruise's eyelashes.
I don't like this.
Nobody on set slept for a week after that. I'm certain.
The hell let that be the thing that we did? Wow.
I cannot imagine.
That safety guy.
Somewhere an insurance company is having a meltdown.
Yeah.
Every single assessor just losing their
Absolutely
minds.
Not. Terrible.
The other thing that we have to discuss, which is perhaps much sillier, is Tom Cruise stamping his foot so hard that a gun pops out of the ground and he can use it to shoot Ambrose.
It's stupid, but it's cool.
None of this is working for me. Basically,
it's all terrible.
This fight scene is so long. I cannot believe.
And then he's finally dead, but he's not really dead. Oh my God.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
That is so hacky. Even by the year 2000, we have done that 78,000 times in movies, and we oughtn't to be doing it anymore.
Yeah.
By the time that we get to him, gun bending this weapon out of the ground, it is so outlandish that I'm almost pleased to see it.
Sure.
Sure. But yeah, and that's it. That's the movie over.
Basically, we get their happy little reunion on the at the park or whatever in Sydney, which I think is kind of cute.
Yeah.
In the end.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that it doesn't
save the day.
It doesn't really end that dramatically, right? We've sketched this much larger conflict. We're sketching this predatory biotech company that is creating a super virus so that it can make money from the cure. But we don't really care about that. We care about
see them brought down? No.
Fist fighting Sean Ambrose in the sand of the Australian beach.
Mm-hmm.
And then rescue the pretty girl, and that's it. Kind of goes out a little dull.
Yeah, and with more Anthony Hopkins, who takes the air out of everything, as you say.
Yes.
Anyway, so yeah.
So anyway, next week, Vanilla Sky. That's going to be fun to talk about.
It might. You never know.
As I said right at the beginning, as I said an hour and a half ago, this is not a good Mission Impossible movie, but it's not a bad movie. Like, it's not a disaster.
Fun in its stupid ways. Yeah,
Let's
stupid cool.
Obey the formalities and put this on the list.
Sure.
Where are you looking?
Oh, I'm thinking somewhere. Gosh.
Mission Impossible is currently at number 3 on the list. Better or worse than Mission Impossible, would you say?
I mean, definitely way worse. Let's go all the way down to, gosh. I'm still going down. Somewhere around Days of Thunder, Risky Business territory?
I think that's probably about right.
That's roughly in the middle? That feels about right, that this is roughly in the middle?
Yeah, well, a little lower than the middle, yeah, but we're close to it.
Yeah.
Days of Thunder is currently 13 on our list of 21 films.
Mm-hmm.
Risky Business is 14. Cocktail is 15. I think that feels like the ballpark. I
think somewhere in there,
ever understand how The Color of Money is so low on this list, but that's
it's
where
because
we
you
are.
Love me and I put it there.
Better or worse than Cocktail? Cocktail is a movie with real highlights and an extremely frustrating third act.
Yeah, which sure feels like this, huh? Better or worse than Cocktail?
It does feel like a weirdly similar film.
Yeah, it kind of does, now that you mention it.
I mean, Cocktail obviously has none of the directorial flourish that we would expect from John Woo.
Yeah, I would give it points for style to put it up above Cocktail.
Risky Business, then, a movie that is kind of stylish in its way. A movie that also has another weirdly slow car
Yeah, that's right. Way hotter cars than Risky Business. I might personally like it more than Risky Business, but I would certainly be willing to slot it underneath if you felt strongly about it.
Oh, I'm here for you. Days of Thunder, then, is the next one. Days of Thunder at number 13. Another
Days of Thunder,
Robert Towne script.
Is it better than Days of Thunder?
Days of Thunder, also a lot of stylish action that becomes a little too stylish at certain points.
Pretty on par with Days of
Another
Thunder. This
kind of self-defeating third act.
Yeah, I could flip a coin under where it goes with Days of Thunder. I think that's about right.
You don't need to. I think if you
because
want
The
to...
Outsiders is above it. And no, I'm not going to put it above The Outsiders. So that's where it goes.
Under Days of Thunder or above Days of Thunder?
We'll put it right above Days of Thunder because I think the highs were higher.
Wow. Really?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. The flamenco dance scene itself was just like so weird and cool and odd, and there were just interesting things.
Okay.
Basically all the Spain stuff.
Mm-hmm. The new number 13 on the list then, Mission Impossible 2. I can't imagine that any of the other Mission Impossible movies are going to go below this one.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Again, this one gets Elizabeth nostalgia points, so I'm sorry about that. They don't make any sense.
Yeah, but the others get actual good movie points.
That's true.
Although
We'll see.
I should admit to the audience at home that you and I have chosen not to see Dead Reckoning yet.
That's true.
Because we
haven't
wanted
seen
the
it
end
yet.
of this podcast series to be dramatic. The original end of this podcast series was supposed to be timed to the release of Dead Reckoning Part 2, which was supposed to be summer 2024, and is now going to be, I think, fall 2025. So we're not,
Insane.
just
Yeah.
going to talk about Tom Cruise movies every week until then. In fact,
Oy.
we have a limited number of episodes in which we're going to talk about Tom Cruise movies because we're
Thank
not quite done
God.
with this episode of The Last Star in Hollywood. This is episode 22.
Yep.
To date, Tom Cruise has 44 released movies. This is the halfway point, you guys.
Halfway.
We did it.
it.
We made it. And we're going to celebrate with a little halfway quiz, right?
Halfway quiz. Okay.
We've been talking about Tom Cruise for almost 6 months. We've done 22 episodes in 24 weeks.
Mhm.
So 2 more weeks and we'll be halfway through our first year of this podcast. So we're going to reflect on those first 22 films. I've got some trivia questions just to test
Oh, dear.
how well you remember the Tom Cruise filmography that
Okay.
we've discussed. I should have just made you name the movies in order. That would have been a fun thing to do too. Maybe a little too cruel. I don't know.
Maybe a little bit. for
Are you
everybody.
ready? We're gonna do
I'm
some-
as ready as I can be.
We're going to do
Yes.
some Tommy trivia right
Okay.
here on the show. What are the 3 movies for which Cruise was nominated for an acting Oscar?
Okay. Magnolia, which we just saw.
Absolutely.
Born on the 4th of July,
Yep.
which was such a huge one. And the other one, have we seen it already?
Yes, we have. We've seen all
We've
3
seen all
of
the
his
ones
acting
that
nominations.
he was nominated
Yes.
for.
What's your
Ooh.
favorite performance? You
My-
don't think of this as being an award nominated film, but it
Oh.
was.
Top Gun?
Nope.
Oh, it's not my favorite performance though, I guess. Yeah.
No,
okay.
it
wait,
is.
wait.
If you look at the list that's in front of you of the movies.
Oh,
that
Jerry
we award-
Maguire. Sorry, I looked at the list. Sorry, you're right. Jerry Maguire. I forgot. You're
That's
right.
Born on
Jerry
the 4th of
Maguire.
July,
Yeah.
Jerry Maguire, and Magnolia. Which Tom Cruise movie runs the longest at 188 minutes?
Eyes Wide Shut.
Nope.
What?
Nope.
Wow. Okay.
There's a much longer film than Eyes Wide Shut.
And
And we watched it
Magnolia.
last week. Yes.
3 hours 8.
Magnolia, so long. The theatrical cut of which Tom Cruise movie runs the shortest, a mere 89 minutes?
Outsiders.
No,
Damn
shorter.
it, I'm not good at
the
this.
theatrical cut of Outsiders is 91 minutes. I
Wow.
want to
So that's
say.
really close though.
So even shorter than that, there aren't that many movies that have had distinct theatrical and extended cuts.
Legend.
Legend is
Okay,
correct. The theatrical
okay.
cut of Legend runs only 89 minutes, which is
Odd.
crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I would like, as an answer for the next question, both
Uh-huh.
the actor and the film in which this actor appeared. Who is Dr. Claire Lewicki?
Dr. Claire Lewicki is Nicole Kidman in Days of Thunder?
Absolutely correct. I could not have given you that name, any part of that name, with a
I
gun
couldn't
to
have
my
either
head.
until you said it.
That was
But
wild.
yeah.
What was the first Tom Cruise movie to have a budget of more than $100 million?
Ooh. Was that Top Gun?
No, Top Gun is like $15 million.
Oh, so this is like really early. See, I'm not good at the money questions. I don't know.
Well, remember inflation. So the later movies
Yeah.
are going to cost more than
that's
the early
true.
movies.
That's true. Okay, so that's further down the road. So that's probably this one. That's a Mission Impossible.
It is-
That's
It is
Mission
this one,
Impossible.
yes. Whatever this film is called. It's Mission Impossible.
Yeah,
This one.
it looked
yes.
expensive. I will give it
Mission
that.
Impossible 2
Yeah.
was the first Tom Cruise movie to cost more than $100 million. $120
$100
million.
Wow.
And yet,
Those
yeah,
maths just don't compute.
the
for me.
highest grossing movie of the year 2000.
Yeah.
It's the interesting phenomenon in franchises where if a movie whiffs, it's the next movie in that series that pays for it,
Yeah.
right? The take on Mission Impossible 3 is reduced because people did not like Mission Impossible 2 as much as they wanted to.
Wild.
Which 2 movies have, potentially at least, Tangerine Dream soundtracks?
Legend.
Yep.
And potentially, yes. Legend
Well,
and
no, it's
no.
potentially
The
Legend.
potential was
Yes.
Legend, but the other one was Risky Business.
Was Risky Business.
Yes.
Fantastic. In which movie is Tom Cruise's girlfriend named Lisa?
All the right moves.
You're extraordinary. I can't believe that you got that. That's
Lisa was
wild.
great.
Which movie, without looking, is at the bottom of our list?
Ooh, bottom of our list is Losing It.
Losing It is
It
absolutely
was
right.
really bad.
Which movie is the bottom of the Rotten Tomatoes list of Tom Cruise movies with only a 9% rating?
Bottom of Rotten Tomatoes.
Yes. Of all the Tom Cruise movies, which one did Rotten Tomatoes decide was
This is
the
ones that we've
worst?
seen, though.
Yes, of all the ones that we've seen.
Okay.
This is actually the bottom of the complete list. It just so
Yeah.
happens that we've seen it. But it is worse than all the Tom Cruise movies seen or unseen as yet by this podcast.
And worse than Losing
Yup.
It. Wow. Did Endless Love do worse?
Endless Love is higher. On
Okay,
that
that
list,
doesn't
believe it
surprise
or
me. I
not.
kind of enjoyed that.
No, Losing It has an 18% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and this movie that we're talking about has a 9% rating, which means that it's half as good. Technically, like mathematically, half as good as Losing
sure.
It.
I can't. You're going to have to tell me.
Cocktail.
Really?
Rotten Tomatoes hates Cocktail, which
They sure
is
do.
kind of surprising.
Huh.
Because it seems like that's the kind of movie that nostalgic film nerds would maybe like.
Maybe it's
Yeah.
not good.
It's not good. Certainly it's not
Interesting,
good.
But that does surprise me. It's at the very, very bottom. Okay.
In which movie would you find the character Stephen Chase?
Stephen Chase.
Stephen Chase.
I don't know. I'm thinking about The Firm, but I don't know why.
It's not The Firm.
Yeah.
He is the antagonist of the piece.
Stephen Chase.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. Nothing.
It's one of the movies co-starring Nicole Kidman.
Oh. That's Far and Away.
It is Far and Away.
He's the Spoons guy.
He's the guy. He's played by Thomas Gibson. He's the other love interest, I
Sure.
guess.
I guess he's kind of
love
an
interest.
antagonist, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Which of Tom Cruise's movies, and this is the last question, which of Tom Cruise's movies do you suppose has the highest rating on Rotten Tomatoes out of the ones that we've seen?
Jerry
There's
Maguire.
obviously some Mission Impossible sequels that
Yeah.
are very high on that list, but of the movies we've seen, it is not, I'm afraid, Jerry Maguire.
It's not Jerry Maguire.
No. When I just described Rotten Tomatoes users as nostalgic film nerds,
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking about this film's popularity.
Weird.
Yeah. What was a very big, very early film?
I mean, Top Gun.
Not as big, but a little earlier.
Would that be Color of Money?
Nope.
Nope, I'm bad at this. You're going to have to tell me, I guess.
Risky Business.
Risky Business.
Risky Business
Sure.
is the highest rated Rotten Tomatoes movie that we have seen
That's
so far.
so
92%.
bonkers. That's
92%.
stupid.
For a
I
film
don't
that
feel
is
bad for not
pretty
knowing
bad.
that. A film that's pretty bad. But you hate Cocktail?
Couple of iconic
Don't we
moments.
have those
No,
right
wait,
next to each
okay.
other on our list?
We do.
We
in
do.
fact, have them.
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Those are basically the same film.
All
Yeah.
right, tomato throwers. I don't even know what you're talking about. Weird.
Overall, what have you thought of this podcast project so far? What do you make of the first half of Tom Cruise's filmography?
Ooh.
Let me ask
Real
you this question.
questions.
Do you think that we were justified in our claim that Tom Cruise is the last star in Hollywood?
I remain, I think, on the fence of whether or not Tom Cruise was the best person to choose for this sort of Hollywood retrospective. Mostly just because he still remains so divisive in so many ways that always just make me feel a little bit, I don't know, prickly skinned.
That's true, though. I mean, at this point in his filmography, this is perhaps his least divisive period, right?
Yeah.
This is when he is the undisputed king of Hollywood. That's one of the reasons
That's
why
one of
Mission
the
Impossible
reasons it
2
was
makes so
interesting.
much money.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. Yeah. I mean, it's still hard to think of anybody else that could get this kind of title for a podcast. I'll put it that way. And certainly anybody else who's worked with so many different directors and so many different auteurs.
Without getting pigeonholed into one particular type of performance.
Or just, following Quentin Tarantino wherever he went
Exactly.
or whatever it is.
Or Scorsese.
Or or a Coen brother or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. So in that sense, I don't remember exactly the wording of the question, but in that sense, I would say that, yes, I think that Tom Cruise is the only argument for the last star in Hollywood. Yes.
And how has your appreciation of his career, his performances, changed since we started this project?
Well, I don't think I had a real take on him either way, except that we had enjoyed seeing Maverick in theater so much. And we're just like, God, this guy just has something.
This guy has it.
He's just got the it factor, right? So it has certainly been interesting to go back through the filmography and see all the different performances, some of which I'm still looking forward to, I would say.
Yeah.
Including Vanilla Sky, honestly,
Sure.
Minority Report, another. So
we've got a couple really interesting movies coming up in the
ones.
very near future. I always stand for War of the Worlds. I think War of the Worlds is a very interesting use of Cruise. And I think that Spielberg is the only person who could possibly have done it, which is doubly interesting. Yeah.
Last Samurai is another strange one that I'm looking forward to seeing. Yeah.
What has been for you the biggest disappointment? What has been the biggest negative surprise, I suppose, as we moved through his career?
Biggest negative surprise. Interesting. I think, honestly, I might have been most let down by Risky Business.
Interesting.
The opening I was interested in, and of course, you get the sock slide, but basically everything else about it.
You were just really committed to that movie being a dream.
Yeah. Also, I really was. And it doesn't make any sense otherwise. So, I guess that's the one that to me is just baffling.
Yeah, I think for similar reasons, albeit in very different ways, Born on the 4th of July, I think was a real bummer. Just a real...
It didn't surprise me, though, as being a bummer,
Yeah.
I would say. Yeah.
It was, pretty pretty bad. What was
Yes.
your biggest positive surprise? What has been your biggest surprise delight as we move through this filmography?
2. The return to legend.
Sure.
And seeing Magnolia for the first time.
Yeah, Magnolia is definitely mine. I think that
That's good.
was a really enjoyable experience, and particularly to move into that movie with the experience of this podcast behind us, right?
Yeah.
We've covered the first half of his filmography, and we're moving into, very consciously, it seems to me, the second half of his career. It's almost like he's drawing that dividing line, although really that dividing line is about to be drawn for him, because Mission Impossible 2 is the last movie that we get while Cruise and Kidman are still together.
Yeah,
They are
then
going
things
to
get
break up in
weird.
the spring of 2001, and his next movie is going to be haunted by the undeniable sexual chemistry of Tom Cruise and Penelope Cruz. It's going to be,
Cruz.
It was everywhere.
It was so weird.
Everywhere in the promotion
Yeah.
for this film. Hey, do you know who's really sexy? Penelope Cruz, obviously. You know who's also really sexy? No, no, I don't. Tom Cruise. The same Tom Cruise? Are you sure? Yeah. We'll finish that up with Vanilla Sky. Cameron Crowe's Vanilla Sky. Next week, it's going to be so interesting, actually, to return to Cameron Crowe. And Cruise has worked so infrequently with the same director more than once, and until at least the very latter part of his career, where he has just turned Macquarie into his workhorse. But it's going to be really interesting to see how he handles that material. I remember really liking Vanilla Sky, so I'm optimistic about next week's show.
Okay, good. I love optimism.
That is going to do it for this episode of The Last Star in Hollywood. Guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thank you so much for presumably listening to the previous 21 episodes as well. It has been a ton of fun. I think I maybe like the second half of his career more than I like the first half of his career.
That's great.
Though definitely the highs and lows are wilder,
Yeah.
I would say. Everything we do here at The Last Star in Hollywood is sponsored by you. For the low price of $5 a month, you can get access to a bunch of extra stuff, including bonus episodes for this show, bonus episodes for my genre fiction show, Stars and Swords, unscripted, unedited shows where we just hang out and chat. I can expect one of those, I think, within the next couple days, because
one of those.
as we are recording this, the Oscars is just getting underway.
Oh, yeah.
That's happening today. So
I'm watching that this evening.
yeah, I'm sure that we'll have
Yes.
things to say about that too. We have a bonus episode coming up on Bridget Jones's Diary, because apparently you guys
So fun.
really want to hear a bonus episode about Bridget Jones's Diary.
I love
can't
it.
wait to talk about that. That's such a great movie. And as I said, everything that we do is possible thanks to you. Elizabeth, would you like to read the names of our wonderful superstar patrons?
Yes, our superstars supporting at the $8 level because they're just the kindest and most generous humans. Leslie Skipa, Louise in Dallas, Megan Lauder, Phoebe, Art Kilmer, Kimberly Bear, Self on a Shelf, Jolene Stark, and our new patron as of this week. Thank you, Chris Dawns.
Thank you so much, guys. Everything that we do, it's all thanks to you. 22 more movies still to go. And of course,
Thanks for sticking with us.
when we make it through the end of the filmography, we will be pivoting to another show.
Yes.
Stay tuned for some details on that coming within, I think, the next couple of weeks or so. We have some
we
things.
need to nail some things down.
Yeah, well, we've got to choose from one of the 17 shows that we have on our slate right now.
That's what I
sure. And of course, we'll also return whenever Cruz puts out a new movie. So this is going to be
Naturally.
an intermittent show, even when we finished his current excellent filmography. That's going to do it for this week. Next week, 2001's Vanilla Sky. I can't wait to talk about it. We'll see you all again soon.
Abre los ojos.